Yeah. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Lady Red of the Black Pants Legion, still, I think, ostensibly, and we are here, and I think my audio is working for once, which is a great start, and if I click a button, hopefully Lictor and Parallax exist.
I exist.
Hey! OBS says you exist. Does chat say you exist? Or is this going to be the week of existential crises?
Dearest Chatathy, it has been many a moon since our last missive. The war has drug on for a very long time, and I hope that the crops and the young ones are doing well. I plan to write to you again in the next fortnight.
Fantastic. Hopefully chat can also hear you.
That's all she wrote.
Yeah, there are three of us. Yes. There are, in fact, three of us this week. I have stolen multiple people's because I could. And because trying to get a time slot with Parallax for this stream has been something that we've actually been trying for about a year. And we're finally here.
Yeah.
There have been attempts. And attempts have been made.
Since before Lictor was co-hosting this.
Yes, since the very beginning.
Wow,
Because
yes.
Parallax is one of the reasons why this stream exists. He's a terrible, terrible bully. How could you?
I am. I bullied the shit out of her.
Yeah. Very good.
Saris, could you stop yelling, please, baby girl?
I appreciate you bullying. That means I exist here now, and that means they got to drag you to fight orcs.
Yes, yeah, we have added Parallax to the Rogue Trader game.
Mm-hmm.
He has met an unfortunate fate already.
But I got cake, so it's okay.
You did get cake, and it was the good lemon cake as well.
And I did actually show off those miniatures on the stream last night. So.
Oh, that is fantastic. I'm pleased to hear that. Okay, we have had a pet redeem. So, dogs, I need one of you to come here. There's also a Corbin here who has redeemed an eye break, and you know what? Where's Discord? I'm going to go and pet Corbin. There we go. That will solve both problems. Corbin, where are you? Where are my DMs?
The question I have to ask is, whose eyes do we have to break?
No comment.
I
have pet the Corbin.
I need coordinates, Red.
Fine. Corbins, he'll regrow them. It's not an issue.
That's true. See?
Just, narrow the field of barrage because Kai is also in Corbin's neck of the woods.
Okay, I'll need a specific window, and when does he go to the loo?
Lady Red, are you interested in a large art project? So, yes, I'm interested. Interest is always guaranteed. Do I have time and space in my project budget? Not necessarily. It will depend on time frames, especially as... So, I had a bit of a day yesterday, and poor Tex. Tex came to me with an idea that I'm very excited to work on, but he happened to catch me when I was at the peak of a writer's high in the middle of writing absolute nonsense for BattleTech, and we had a conversation. It was a fun time.
Error.
Yes.
Concern.
So that is one of the things I wanted to talk about this week. So I guess we'll start there.
Lizard.
Lizard.
Missile.
Lizard.
Blizzard.
Oh God, no! Please not. So I know we
Wizard.
have quite a few people here who write, both in chat and joining me very kindly in the studio today. Do any of the rest of you get writer's high when you're in the middle of something and you are just so excited and just cackling like a goblin because everything is coming together?
Not necessarily writing, but the creative, how shall we say, creative flow absolutely happens.
Excellent.
The lady sometimes calls it when the muse catches you by the short hair.
Yes, and that has very much happened to me over the course of this week with Hungry Like the Wolf, and it's been in some ways nice, in some ways horrifying. There was an overconsumption of cider on one particular night, and I wrote 5 chapters on the Hungry Like the Wolf rewrite yesterday. And I found myself in that unique Zen zone where I knew what I was doing, I knew how I was solving issues, I've hit like past the midpoint of the book where everything is coming together, and I was, yes, I did get to the and now they kiss part, which writing romance is a interesting experience. Saris, we don't need your commentary, baby girl.
Woof.
She has many woos.
Yes.
And writing a romance about characters that aren't your own, that you don't necessarily have a personal care for, is another thing entirely. And then adding on the third layer on top of the first time I read about these characters, I despised them, is another layer on top of that. But I did get to the point yesterday where I felt like their relationship made sense, that they had earned a kiss and some hand-holding, and it actually felt kind of nice to write. And then I had to sit back and realise that, I had written the words Alaric Ward as part of this, and I was very confused, and then I went and drank some more cider and everything was okay.
Yeah. Why won't you drink some cider over it, huh? Yeah, that sounds about right. You go do that.
Oh, good God.
Hand-holding, loot, yeah.
Troa,
I
how
had them
many
hand-hold.
fucking more do you have on Gunpla?
Troa stays busy. It's important.
No fucking kidding.
Ed says, I had an idea explode out of my head last Tuesday for the blood on the lens stuff. It delayed getting my car fixed because I needed to write. Yes, excellent, Ed, excellent. Life on hold for writing. This is a very familiar feeling.
Real concern.
I've definitely not lost
Yes.
entire days to writing when I should have been doing other things. Bash the Castrian, Uma, you have to. No! Depending on how things go today, and if we run out of time, we might drag out the Umas. We will see. So yeah, I had a writing high this week. We are up to nearly 200 pages in the Hungry Like the Wolf rewrite. I think I can get it finished in the next week, including editing, as I promised that I would. And we will go from there. Oh, you mean the plastic crack? Oh, fair enough. I will not behave. I will never behave. And you of all people expecting me to, Corbin, is ridiculous.
Not sure she knows how.
So the original Hungry Like the Wolf, it has 21 chapters, including the epilogue, and basically qualifies as a novella at best. I'm probably going to hit short
I
novel
don't think
length.
best should get into that sentence.
I mean, you're right. I'm up to 12 chapters. I'm working on chapter 12 now. However, my chapter 12 has covered as much content as up to the end of the original's chapter 16. Because pacing is important, and cutting out bullshit that doesn't actually develop the characters and just makes them aggravating is also important. So I'm working on chapter 12, and let me get you an exact count of how many words are we up to in this nonsense. Saris, please stop yelling. We are up to 42,000 words in the rewrite. Which is about 20,000 short of a, short to standard novel length. And I reckon I'll hit about 60k by the time I'm done.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's all. Which, in a month, not bad going whatsoever, especially if I can pull it into something resembling a semi-edited form. I did go through yesterday and do a whole load of formatting because I have bitched something chronic about the formatting errors in this book, and thus if I leave a single one in my version, there will be no honor, and I will have to commit ritual
The
Sudoku.
gods will... There will be murder.
Yes.
The
This is
gods
normal.
will murder.
Yep.
Of course it's something.
As would be
Yes.
right. So that's where we're at with that. I have had a couple of people proofread where I'm at and where I'm going with it. One of my people I rely on very heavily for reading my nonsense as it comes out was reading it yesterday and was actually giggling, which, I consider to be a good sign in a romance comedy. So hopefully some of the jokes will land. I fit in a lot of chats requests. We do have mad ducks just randomly in one chapter wandering across the road.
That's normal.
We have Discount Dan.
We have Crow.
We do. We had the Crowbarn cameo in the opening chapter. That is there. We also have some other BPL isms throughout it. The battle pod scene I had a lot of fun with. I decided to load on board some advertising software and had a bit of fun with that. So we do have Randolph P. Checker's old-fashioned, smooth sipping, cherry-flavoured engine degreaser 2-stroke red. That's in there. And I also decided Davendra needed to have a life outside of just, being better than everybody else and working with the Ilkhan. So she now is into miniatures as a hobby, and she also has a plant called Sebastian that she talks to, and he is a ficus, because of course he is.
What else would he be?
I did start out with him being a Monstera until Archon Erica pointed out that he should absolutely be a ficus, and of course he was correct, so he is a ficus.
I'm sorry. I'll have to kill her now. I'm sorry.
But the ficus is, of course, a wonderful reference to Deltard Green, so...
Oh yes, no, of course. It's just that I'm terribly sorry. I promise to make it to be gentle. Don't worry about it. She won't see it coming.
Persona music
yes.
intensifies.
Yes, death threats aside to completely imaginary characters over the existence of very specific, non-specific existences of plants. Yes.
Does it make you feel any better if Sebastian very conveniently never responds to her?
It actually gives her a certain chance of remaining in a solid state for slightly longer.
She argues with him about work and her emotions and other things, including, the political direction of the story, and Sebastian hasn't trained in politics, is unqualified, so he doesn't respond. It's great. The fact that he's a ficus is notwithstanding.
And someone not commenting on something they have zero training yet?
He is a very, very intelligent plant.
You pulled me out of the realism with any thing deciding not to engage with something like that.
Someone having zero opinion on something. Okay, can we elect him for Ilkhan?
I mean, I'd be down for that. Does Wolf have autism? The original incarnation of Alaric Ward in Hungry Like the Wolf, I would say from the way he and Darvendra interact that they are both definitely neurodivergent in some way or another. I don't want to put a specific label on it, but I have opinions.
I'm pretty sure Alaric Ward definitely qualifies as a sociopath.
In my version, I've certainly tried to lean into him making more sense and possibly pushing more towards the, I wouldn't say sociopath angle, because I've actually tried to make him likable, which, medal please. I would very much like a medal for trying to do this. And I do think I've done better than the original. I already
gave you a medal.
You did, and multiple prayers and a wonderful piece of AI artwork that is currently my desktop background because it's so goddamn funny.
Make it gayer.
Make it, yes, I have a whole pot of make it gayer.
The AI gods demand it.
Introspective sociopath also works because in the original version of the book, Ward has no emotional regulation whatsoever, to the point where it doesn't make sense. After the attack by Clan Hell's horses with the stealth Atlas 2 that we're just not going to go into this week, but Jesus Christ, his response to that is so overly emotionally charged in a way that is counterproductive to what he's trying to do. Sociopath definitely works.
That's weird. I always thought that sociopaths divested themselves from emotions to the point of being unable to recognize them, or maybe it's just mine. Never mind. I do not understand the DCM, so.
Yeah. I mean, none of us are qualified to make those diagnoses, regardless. But yeah, I've at least tried to make Ward likable, because one of the things with romance books, if you're writing a romance, I mean, technically it's true for any book, if you can't make the audience give a shit about the person you're expecting them to follow, they're probably not going to read your book. You have some wiggle room to start with a character who maybe doesn't come across as instantly likable, but you need to build up some rapport between the audience and the character if you want to get anywhere. Which, incidentally, brings me to one of the other things I wanted to talk about this week. Parallax, you've had me reading a book, and the introduction to the first character in that can be problematic for some people. You want to talk about this awesome book?
I can talk about this book. So the issue is that there are enough twists and turns in it. I'm always worried about spoiling things for people that haven't read it. But Red has gotten a copy of 2 of my favorite books, and they're on the list of my favorite books for particular reasons, beyond the fact that they are just phenomenal stories and phenomenally well written. These were books that, when I first read them, they were really the first pieces of fiction that I read that challenged me in such a way that the story itself was enjoyable, but there was a lot more that you could get out of it if you knew more about what they were talking about. And that pushed me to do that. And that was really the first time that happened.
I really like that the book, it doesn't sort of handhold you and go, well, I want you to understand this thing, so I'm going to explain it in excruciating detail before I'm... It's just like, no, you either know Wagner or you don't. You either know Saxon English or you don't.
Yes. And there are it does not spoon feed you anything.
That sounds like Frank Herbert.
It is not Frank Herbert, though there is a moment in this book that reminded me of Frank Herbert, so it's a good comparison.
No, I mean the no hand holding thing.
Yes, very much. Details and setting and all that kind of stuff is revealed through the course of the book when it is appropriate for the person telling it to have told it. It doesn't give you any of the what's the word I'm looking for? Exposition dumps, thank you, that you would get out of a simpler book. The book is Hyperion by Dan Simmons. This came about largely because, wow, your caps lock really did some work there.
It did. And you know who's to blame for that? Anka. Anka jumped up. And just like, yeah, I'm just going to hit caps lock for you as you die.
And Corbin's right. That's exactly how I saw that. But this book was released in 1989, and it won the Hugo Award that year. And it absolutely fucking deserved it. And the author had 4 more sci-fi novels that he wrote. I would tell you that the last 2 are better than the middle 2, and the first 2 are easily the best, but they're all good. Mostly Simmons wrote a lot of horror stories, a few detective-ish stories, and interesting things in there through that. If you're familiar with I know there was a miniseries of this a few years ago, The Terror, about the Northwest Passage expedition with, I think that was Franklin's expedition. I could be wrong about that, but that was based off of a book by Dan Simmons. Summer of Nights, another one. There's lots of them. But the whole thing about it is that the first book is written as a frame narrative, deliberately drawing comparison to the Canterbury Tales, where you have a number of people on a literal pilgrimage going to do a thing, and they're all telling their story about why they're doing this as they go. And like I said, the book doesn't hold your hand. It expects you to know what it's talking about. It's not required. It helps if you know some of the stuff to get the underlying meaning of some of these things, but you really don't have to know it.
The context clues
Red,
around
what else
it
did you
are
want to
really
hit on
good.
about it?
I
Yes.
mean, for me, you've obviously said here that it's based on, the way that the Canterbury Tales were set up. But for me, when I picked it up, the very first story is following sort of the journal entries of the characters that you're first starting with, which for me immediately reminded me of Dracula and Jonathan Harker's opening. So I was kind of hooked from square one, because for me, I was just like, oh yes, this is cozy and comfortable. And now we're moving into oh god, my
body horror
fridge
bit.
logic, and my brain is putting together what's being put down, and oh dear. And yeah, I was kind of gripped from there onwards.
Yeah, so there's 6 stories in the first book, and each one of them is a different genre in the setting.
Yes.
So the first one is a travelogue. The second one is kind of space opera. The third one is what do you call the fucking poet story? I don't know what genre that would be.
The poet story is Drunky McSwearpants gives you stage directions and narrates his life. It's great.
It really is. That one is phenomenal.
It's so much fun.
And they all have like an
Would
underlying
you
theme to it.
characterize it as Shakespearean?
No.
Not quite, but if you it would be Shakespearean if people no, it would be Shakespearean if people read Shakespeare today the way Shakespeare was read in his own time. Because today everyone sort of looks at Shakespeare and is like, oh yes, how erudite, this old English, and he invented words. Whereas if you lived at the time, it was just a collection of, fart jokes and poking fun at things, and
then,
the poet's story is kind of that.
And there's the bit in there where there's a I fucked your mom joke, and
yes.
I forget which one, but yeah.
Yes, not but great wit.
I was also absolutely tickled and delighted by the fact at one point the poet character turns himself into a satyr for a while because of a certain character I've written for a long time in the past, and I was like, haha, I know where this is going, and then it did, and it was great, and I was very happy.
Yeah, the fourth story, the scholar story, is fucking traumatic.
Yeah, that one was a hard read. I'm really glad you gave me the warning about that. And if we do get Lictor to go through this book, that might need to be a chapter you skip, Lictor, and I'll just sum it up for you. Because that was a very hard read. That was a very, very hard read.
The fifth story is detective noir.
I have to explain to the crowd, I'm not a particularly squeamish person, but there are certain subjects that hit closer to home than others.
Yeah, this would be a case like for my friend Alex. He's been exactly the same boat for the same reasons. Of that chapter, not all writing is for all people. It's great when writing challenges you. It's great when writing makes you think about things, but life is complicated, people are complicated, and the magic of writing is that you have the ability to put concepts and ideas and traumas and pains and joys and all of the emotions and experiences that are being human and being alive straight into somebody else's head through the medium of words. And sometimes that's not a kind thing to do. That not all writing belongs to all people.
Yeah.
Not all thoughts belong in all brains.
The story we're talking about in particular here, it's like being squeamish isn't part of it. It is entirely emotional distress across the board. Like it's fucking rough.
Yes, and it involves somebody's daughter, so
Yeah. Again,
the last story is another kind of journal story that.
Oh, I'm excited to get to that because I don't even know who the last story is yet.
No, and I'm not going to tell you.
Fabulous.
Actually, let me think about that for a minute. Because you've been through 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, yeah. I can't tell you because there's
and I've also got some suspicions about what's going on.
Wait.
So,
you're through the poet story already.
Yes.
You're through the scholar story.
Yes.
You already know that there aren't going to be 7 stories.
No, I know that there aren't going to be 7 stories, but I've got some suspicions about something that happened with the guy who went missing on the
second ship.
Yeah, on the one across the grass sea. I have some suspicions. I'm probably wrong, but I'd like to find out I'm wrong in the prose rather than...
That gets covered in the second book. But the sixth story, therefore, through process of elimination, you should know who that is.
I have some guesses, but, there's ways I could have taken it if I was writing the book, so I look forward to finding out what the author did do.
Okay.
God,
the second book does not use the frame narrative, but it does somehow manage to tie all the stories together in a very neat package, which might be the greatest triumph of these books, is that it all gets tied together and it makes sense.
I'm really looking forward
What?
to it because I've very much been enjoying this book so far.
You can't.
I know,
Yeah.
right? I know. I've read something
Big books.
good. And one of the nice things that's happened, and it's not, this wouldn't normally be under my list of nice things, but I have no time. So at the minute, when I was younger, I would get, like the new Terry Pratchett book came out, I'd have read it in 4 hours. And I'd think it was great. I'd have laughed at all the jokes. 4 hours, I'm done. I don't have the ability to read that way at the minute, and this book doesn't use sentences in a way that deserves to be read that quickly. I'm enjoying lingering on the prose, but I don't have that much time each evening because of how busy I am, which means I'm reading it in like sections, which is giving me time to process what I've read before I add the next bit on, and I think this book really benefits from that. It's not one of these things that just needs to be unraveled all in one go from beginning to end. Having time to sit with what I've read has been really pleasant. I have enjoyed it very much, very much. I am looking forward to finishing it.
Oh, and I am looking forward to you finishing the second book so that you can hit all of the bits of, oh God, is that how that worked? But yeah.
I'm certainly looking forward to it. It will be a good time.
If any of you are interested, I would strongly recommend the first 2 Hyperion books. The second duology, it is not an immediate continuation of the same story. I tend to think of it as a related story in the same setting. It's not a sequel. I only recommend that one if you really, really enjoyed the first one. And it's not the same kind of story.
Mm-hmm.
And then his last 2 books, Ilium and Olympos, also phenomenal, also just as packed full of the intertextuality and required knowledge and all that kind of stuff in an entirely different way.
Wonderful. That does sound
Fun
good.
because I did get my hands on Ilium.
Mm-hmm.
I do have that book specifically.
Have you read it?
Portions of it. I was too young at the time. It was just one of these books that was sitting there. I was at the beginning of my degree in history, and I was busy, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. It was like, okay, these guys are weird. It's a sort of a sci-fi rendition of subjects that I do like. Why are they doing this, that, like this? I'm leaving.
Yeah, that's one that, again, 2 books, and a lot of stuff is explained more in the second one, but very transhumanist themes in that one, in ways that you don't necessarily expect when you talk about transhumanism.
Yeah, which is funny because transhumanism is one of my favorite subjects ever since the Eclipse phase.
Yeah.
Okay.
So,
Red, what else? Did you want to hit on anything else about it, or are you ready to move on?
not about that, but there was a reason that, you and I have been trying to get a time slot that worked together for this for a long time, and that is not Dan Simmons.
It's true. It, in fact, is another more recognized and inarguably more successful author. And love him or hate him based on his work, Brandon Sanderson is easily the most popular and successful writer in sci-fi fantasy right now. And I mean, maybe arguably in fiction at the moment. And I'm not going to be talking about his writing. That's not what I wanted to talk about, interestingly. Sanderson teaches a class every year in the spring semester at BYU. And he did this, he took the class when he was in college, and he got asked to take it over after a number of the professors that taught it retired. He teaches a class specifically on not writing in the way that you expect it to be, creative writing or, anything like that. The process is almost not based on the writing. It's almost based more on how do you write a book that gets published.
Which is a very different set of skills than how do you write a book you're passionate about.
Yes, and he will be the
Sometimes
first
they
one to.
overlap, sometimes they don't.
It, in his first class, he will often talk about if you want to be a writer, then it's going to take this, this, and this, and you're not necessarily going to succeed. So you need to be aware of this one thing, and that is if you're going to do this, then if you're going to stay engaged with it, then you have to ask yourself some questions like, if I do this and the book is never published, will I still be happy to have done it? And if the answer to that is yes, then you're in great shape. Because if you're not tying yourself up to it to say, yes, I'm writing this specifically to publish it so that I can make money off of it and make a living on it, and then that doesn't happen, you're going to be burned on it. And you're probably going to lose whatever love that you had for it because you're going to look at yourself as a failure. But if you're writing the book because you like writing and you want to be better at it, or however that goes, then do it. And maybe you can try to get it published, and maybe you can keep practicing at it and see where you get. But yeah, don't do it because you're trying to exploit the market on it, because very, very, very few people ever manage to make that work. And that market is only getting worse.
The publishing industry has changed so drastically in the last 15 years from what it used to be like. It is a very, very different world, because you've got the 6 big publishing houses and they're still kicking about, but the attitude and ethos and ethics of how books are now, I shouldn't say books, because when you say book you think of a physical thing, and that's part of what's changed over time, is books no longer are physical things. Ebooks are huge. Self-publishing has become a much bigger thing, and it's had effects on the industry, and it's had effects in various different ways. I mean, in some ways we are in a golden age where anybody can publish anything, but it's also not a golden age and has turned it into a desert, because when anybody can publish anything, the amount of trash that is out there, including the, gems in the rough, is just unbelievable. So that makes publishing houses even more important to be able to winnow through those things and bring out the good stuff. The problem, however, is when people have an infinite amount of choice, that tends to make publishing houses, or any company in any industry, want to only take on board known risks. They don't want to take outside risks. They don't want anything that rocks the boat or pushes the envelope, because people can just go literally anywhere else. So you end up with this really weird situation, and it's frustrating.
It's very much like the movie industry right now, where you end up in circumstances where, movies are making more money than they've ever made, ever. But they're also chasing trends and
taking the least amount of risks ever.
Exactly.
And everything's becoming very homogenized, and homogeny is just the death of creative interest and the death of inspiration for the next generation.
And when you get into the writing side of it, the comparison there with the self-publishing would be somebody has a YouTube channel, and there's a lot of trash in the YouTube channel too. So
I will, if I'm allowed to weigh in on this.
Go for it.
Of course.
I'm anything but. I'm a programmer in the current year. I'm not a publisher or creative in any shape, way, or form. But from the outlook of it, I think we're entering an even more saturated era in which the small communities and the more direct to audience is becoming ever more important.
Yes.
The way to divest yourself from your audience through the usage of an intermediary that is the publisher, is the margins on that are shrinking and disappearing and becoming less and less likely as the time goes on.
What I find really... Go, sorry, please finish your thought.
What I'm saying is that the creative, if they want to bring whatever they have to say to a public, any public, they're going to have to find a way to build themselves a name in a community and interact with their community Otherwise, getting someone else to do it will either require money that you're right, you ostensibly do not have, you're not making money out of it, out of the bat, or you'll have to, bootstrap it. Now, there are ways to bootstrap it, and this is not stream to discuss it, but there are ways to bootstrap it, and this is how, if there's going to be a creative process and growth in that specific, my prediction or my view on it, that this is where it's going to go.
What I think is interesting is we look at some analogous industries, because Safu has just brought up the fact that every entertainment industry potentially has this problem, and yes, there are two industries that are really interesting at the minute in terms of sort of talking about this issue and the problem and the fact that it exists. The first easiest one is the movie industry right now. Markiplier just released Iron Lung, which outdid top movies at the box office, but he had to do everything basically himself at an immense cost that he poured in at the front, but he recouped on the back end, only to be basically ignored and overlooked by the establishment because he didn't do it the way it's supposed to be done. And there's a whole commentary to be had there, but thankfully Markiplier was in a place to bring something he was really passionate about in front of an audience, but he had to be willing to take on all of the roles. Producer, director, funding, everything, because as Lictor's saying, this intermediary, we can't really rely on it anymore. The other industry that's interesting to look at and is effectively ahead of the game so far is video games. And the only reason video games is currently doing better is because the establishment, the established companies have thankfully been so goddamn incompetent. Video games at the minute, when I look at my Steam library and everything that I've played in like the last 24 months, 90% of it is from the indie market. And that is because we have a distribution platform that, while it is far from perfect, does at least put in some oversight. And there is the sort of word of mouth and ground level journalism you can get involved in to know, when a game is coming out, should I expect it to be good or bad? What are the industry practices that are going on that inform me whether this thing is worth my time or not? And when you get to indie developers who have had to start this sort of process of, I need to carve out my own audience, cultivate it and respect it if I want to stand alongside people who could be spending their time on the latest AAA game, they're kind of ahead in that regard in doing that and putting things out and building a community. And I love my indie games. There's a couple of AAA developers I'll still buy games from and have a good time, but not many. Most of what I play is indie because the big companies they're taking the same risks over and over and over again, trend chasing, and I'm not interested. There's no creativity there. It's not for me. Movies, I hope, will start to move in that direction. And I do hope that we get... I think what literature really needs is some kind of quality control release platform that would allow stories people are genuinely passionate about to rise up from the mess of just trash that's out there, especially with AI now being a thing.
I think that the fact that I narrowed and winnowed down every last book that I read in the last few years, it's been 4 years now since the troubles have begun, was through the curation of either small communities on the internet or friends that have similar tastes and interests to mine. So I've been reading more books in the last 3 years, and it only happened because of words. I swear, I know English, at least a little bit, because of Audible and audiobooks. And that changed how I do things in reading. And if I could trust Goodreads or any other such mechanism on the internet to suggest things, it would be great. And communities that share interest over specific types of books, and in specific, for instance, I like progression, stories, and they like Gentian, and they like cultivation stories, and etc. It's a small enough niche that there are only so many books that are widely acclaimed as good. So it's easy to get to them over the chaff. But usually you need to go through, and you've talked about the power of fan fiction in the past.
Oh yes, yes, I have strong opinions on fan fiction and why it has a place in the world.
Again, it has a place and it has a role, and it's useful for its role again. And through the power of fan fiction and the community it fosters, I keep saying communities, but you have these nooks and crannies. You have Reddit, you have, and with the ability of machines to give you the information you're looking for faster and easier, perhaps we are not that far away from a future where you can tell, I want to read that sort of a book and be directed to it in a relatively easy manner.
Yeah.
I'm somewhat optimistic about it.
I would love for that optimism to come true. And I mean, I've written thousands and thousands of words this week and over the last month. And I believe in writing. It is magic. It's literally magic that you can just use the medium of words to take something in your head and put it into somebody else's head and they get it. And that's incredible. And I don't think we'll ever sort of lose that. But
it's still going to be complicated to achieve.
I wish we were further along the process, is I guess where I wish we were at. And yes, I am indeed a My Immortal apologist. Introspective also says people need to stop being so elitist about fan fiction. It's just as respectable. I don't know if I'd use the word respectable. I think it's fan fiction. I mean, I've had this rant on this slot many times. Fan fiction is giving budding writers Legos and giving them sort of instructions of here's how you can put a house together, but then also encouraging the person putting the house together to experiment and maybe use different colored blocks, or maybe you change the layout of this room and then you slowly work up until you're making completely your own original things. There is a lot of fan fiction out there that is trash. It is absolute trash, and scarily some of it gets picked up and published. I'm looking at you, 365 and After. Jesus Christ. But it does have a place and it is important and it should be respected.
And Sanderson actually has a thing to say on that, as in one of the lectures he got a question about it. He sees fan fiction as a great way to start out, because when you're working with an existing IP, when you're working with existing characters, you already have the basic building blocks of those characters set up. You know how they're going to act in a given situation because that's already... Do I conquer? I don't know. Maybe I conquer. Some things get conquered. I don't think I'm a conqueror, but anyway, it already sets up for you. This is the world you're living in. You've already got this much depth to pull from. These are the characters you're working with. We already know what their attitudes and stuff are like. It's kind of riding with training wheels.
Yeah, it's building blocks. You're giving them the building blocks to put things together. You don't need to make the block from square one. You can arrange them how you want. And one of the first things that you'll see fanfiction, which is why fanfiction has some of the bad... some of the sort of bad tropes that fan fiction is known for, is one of the first things a budding writer will often play with is characterization of the person. You haven't got to worry about your world building, you haven't got to worry about setting, you haven't got to worry about your stakes because you're playing with a setting you already know. The first thing that most people will play with is character, and that's why you get this whole thing of, but the character would never act that way. No, this is a young writer experimenting with how to write characterization, and that's fine.
There is just people doing what they want with their characters.
Yep. I wrote fanfiction when I first started out. I moved into communal roleplay on Gaia with no capacity to understand how that should work, and it was absolutely abysmal. And that was when Paul Corbin ran across me, and we started learning together. And without that phase in my life, I would not have the skill sets that I have now. It's a very valuable thing. That said, do I think that there are fanfics out there that deserve to win awards? Possibly some. hell of a lot that should very much only be on places like AO3 for people to engage with if they want to, and not to demand money or attention beyond that, because they're learning steps, and that's fine.
I do want to step in here and address introspective, because they're saying that they're disagreeing that fan fiction is something you have to move on from. I don't think that's what we're saying.
No, and that's the thing with fan fiction, is a lot of people will move on from it. Some people don't, and become really, really good at writing in somebody else's original setting, in the same way that some artists are really good at emulating another artist's style, which you need to have, big animation studios, etc. I think the progression for most people, though, is even if you are doing fanfic professionally at the far end, where you're writing in a setting that you did not personally create and come up with, or with characters you didn't personally write and come up with, you move out of the fan fiction mindset of it being, I'm writing this because I love this thing and I want to learn more, and this is cool and I want to make it cooler. You move into a more professional mindset that happens to be using somebody else's creation that you're now writing in, and that is a very respectable skill set to have. I just don't know that for me, I think of that as fan fiction.
Let's build on that for a second, because there's a line here that I think there's some stuff that'll come up in chat from this, but we're talking about fan fiction in terms of somebody is writing something with existing characters and et cetera, et cetera. Okay, there is also a concept in the publishing industry that is write for hire, which is effectively this, but sanctioned, where you are taking, most of the authors that we know at this point, that we grew up with, a lot of them were doing write for hire. And, we love some of those things. We talk about Timothy Zahn in the Thrawn trilogy. And I mean, that was effectively, you could make an argument there that that's kind of fan fiction. It's write for hire, working with existing characters in an existing setting. And he's just injecting new characters and ideas into it. Yes, Nida was saying it's professional fan fiction. To an extent, it is.
I think I know where I have the stumble with why I phrase things the way that I do. It's the word fan.
Yeah.
Fan in fan fiction to me means somebody who is really keen on a thing and wants to do stuff with it. Whereas once you've got to the point where you're officially doing stuff, or it's become a well-developed skill, I feel like the word fan isn't sufficient to cover somebody who has developed to that level. Yeah. And that's just because of how people colloquially view what the meaning of the word being a fan of something is. I think that's where
true,
I have the hang up.
The line is fuzzy, because he's going to pop in here and he's going to say, no, and then say fountain drink and then walk off. But that's not actually what I meant. The line can be awfully fuzzy on that, because, as you're saying, a person who is effectively professional and paid for it and sanctioned by the owner of the IP or the licensee of the IP, they are working on something that is not fan fiction because it's sanctioned and it's official. Well, the line gets real fuzzy when you look at something like Shrapnel the magazine, because those are fan submissions that are within the BattleTech IP that are going into a magazine that is published by Catalyst. And that straddles that line real hard.
I think also I should put, sort of on the record, so to speak, that I don't think fan fiction is lesser. I just think that it is often a vehicle to the end goals people will end up at, which perhaps have different terms that better describe them. I don't think fan fiction is lesser. I think it is absolutely goddamn critical, just to answer that. But the other thing as well is, for people who just are writing for a hobby and maybe write fan fiction for their entire lives with no intention of it being published, no intention of it becoming a paid for skill set, they just do it because they want to, that is 1000% valid. And I'm sure there are people out there who are writing incredible stories that they write purely for themselves, and that is very, very, very valid, and I don't in any way intend to diminish people who do that either. What is your opinion on expanding on an established universe, i.e. Star Wars, which in the old days were made by artists who had to write a story but not make it canon, even though they did? That gets complicated, and I think that's one of those things that is going to be personal for a lot of people. I think some people will find that, yes, building on established universes, whether it's going to become canon or not, is a great thing. And I think there'll be other people who see it as muddying the waters, clouding things, etc., etc. And I don't think there's sort of a unified through line of logic that can be sort of applied as well, it's probably this. Star Wars, I think, suffers from bloat, from too many writers, too many hands in the pan, too many directional leads and decisions as the IP has moved through different phases of its life. And personally, I find that's an issue. On the other hand, I know some people who absolutely adore certain book series set in the Star Wars expanded universe. And I'm not going to tell them they're wrong. If you get enjoyment out of something, carry on. That's fine. I'm not here to yuck somebody else's yum.
People having opinions and enjoying their own things.
Yeah, I know,
Good.
right?
And you call yourself British.
Indeed. But I did drink my tea this morning, so I'm not trying to colonize things. We're okay.
Fine.
Not trying to colonize things yet.
Correct. We do still need to get our plan together to sack Rome, though. Well, no, we're not sacking Rome. That was Zork's job. We're New Triumvirate.
I am merely providing historical references as need be.
It's not wrong.
I am facilitating and translating for those from the barbarians who can't read proper Latin.
While we're talking about licensed works,
Yes.
Yeah.
I do find this to be an interesting thing in as far as differences between licensees. Where, looking back, we're talking a lot about Star Wars. Star Wars in the Bantam Spectra era back in the 90s, that was one thing. There was no expectation of there being more movies or of these necessarily tying into any kind of movies or whatever. After Disney bought them, there were some very deliberate actions to write books that tied into it, that gave explanations for, like, how did the Empire fall and that kind of stuff. Beyond that, let's set that aside. If you look at something, getting back to tabletop stuff, I'm always surprised at the difference in quality between... Now, I'm going to say this having not read half of this. The difference in quality between the things that are published under the Battletech IP, which, if you enjoy them, that's great. I'm not going to tell you that you're not allowed to do that. I don't happen to think they're tremendously well written, and I don't usually think they're tremendously compelling stories. That's me. You're allowed to have it. And then you look at the Black Library that lots of people get very fucking invested in. And I hear people say that some of these are some of the best books I've ever read. I don't know. Maybe they are, maybe they're not. But just...
I have read some great books from the Black Library. I have also read some trash books from the Black Library.
And I don't think I've read anything with the Battletech IP on it that has been more than, that was pretty good. And I just think that's interesting because I don't think Catalyst or FASA before them were terribly interested in making really good literature.
Which, to a degree I can understand, but I think in some ways I'd rather take that was pretty good consistently for everything that comes out over the breadth of the Black Library, from absolute dog turds to really, really good. And then the thing that bothers me most about the Black Library is an issue that doesn't come from the authors, it doesn't come from the publishing house behind it, it comes from GW executives. And that is, we have decided this thing no longer exists in the setting, and thus half of this writing people have really enjoyed technically is now non-canon. That really annoys me.
They always
really
get to
annoys
hide
me.
behind the Empire is huge and anything that you read at any given point could be propaganda. So everything is true and nothing is true, and they can hide behind that.
Yeah, the problem, though, is that you know exactly where GW's coming from, and for me, I get to the point where I can't separate the art from the artist, in inverted commas. It's more a case of separate the art from the executive board. I cannot separate the two because of the way that GW goes about its business model, unfortunately, which is a shame because, I like some of Sandy Mitchell's writing. I like quite a bit of Dan Abnett's writing, though he's also produced things I don't like. I can't can't stand CS Goto. It's a range, and I'd love to only have the ability to sort of comment on, why do I love what Dan Abnett did here, but I don't love what happened over there. That's like proper literary analysis and interesting. Whereas instead, it always ends up with me coming back to, yes, but none of this matters because God knows what's actually canon. What actually matters out of this entire library. So
I love cannons.
indeed.
And now, I don't want to get us entirely bogged down in bitching about GW because I can do that. I did that some last night.
Let's
We're not going to actually fix the fucking paint. We're not going to put it in dropper bottles. No, we're just going to change the name because fuck you.
we
Yeah.
are going to have enough GW tomorrow.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So the thing that I'm just trying to say here is when you get into write for hire on existing IPs like this, it just kind of hurts me to look at Battletech as an IP and just have nothing there that I feel like is actually terribly good. A lot of it is, how did you put it earlier? Lowest common denominator for the masses kind of slop.
Yeah.
And
Chasing trends.
yeah, chasing trends and that kind of thing. And again, if you like that, good. If you're happy with it, I'm happy for you. I wish the writing were better.
Yes. Yeah.
But everybody's there for the big stompy robot fights, and I don't find that to be compelling.
I think that's fair, and again, we don't yuck other people's yums, but for me, I'm kind of in the same boat. But big stompy robots doing big stompy cool robot things because of an underlying human story that's being told well is the coolest thing, and that's where the trick is how do I make the framing of what the robots are doing work with a deeper narrative, and that's partly what I've been trying to do with the Hungry Like the Wolf rewrite. I don't have a full suite of tools, but I've been trying.
We're working back around to one of the Sanderson things I wanted to hit on. This is the one that sticks out in my head because I have seen it work and I have seen it not work. And again, for everybody that wants to look into this, Sanderson teaches this class every year at BYU, and at least twice so far, he has recorded the entire lecture series, and it is on YouTube, and you can watch it right now, okay? And I would recommend it because it gives you a lot of insight into how this stuff is done. Each one is almost every one is an hour long. This is not short. This is 16 videos. Some of them are maybe half an hour. Most of them are an hour plus. But
of course,
it is a full college course. When he teaches the class, he has like 200 students in the main class, and then he does a small group of students that submitted their writing to him to be considered to look at actually doing this and trying to go pro.
Mm-hmm.
And apparently, every year that he does this, he ends up with somebody that ends up, one or two people every year that end up professionally involved in publishing, whether it's writing or editing or doing something. He has a shockingly high success rate on that. But the thing that he talks about that always sticks in my head is that when you are writing a book that you intend to be successful and to sell, again, this is all toward yes, very much like Dr. Sledge on Esoterica. If you're trying to sell a book to be sold and be successful, one of the first things that he hits on is the idea of promises and payoffs.
Yeah.
And the idea there is that early on in the book, you set up an expectation for what this book is going to be like. And that is the promise that you are making at the beginning of the book. If it's Star Wars, you have the promise of it's going to be an adventure, and it's going to be there's giant spaceships and epic fights, and there's this little old farm boy, and the promise there is that the little old farm boy is going to go on and be the hero in space. That's the payoff.
Yeah.
The the way that you get into that in books is the same thing. Like, it can be a very long running thing where you have promises and payoffs across a series, and you hit them, and then you hit them, and you hit them, and then maybe at some point you change them, and that can be an issue. If you stick to the promises and payoffs idea, then usually you're gonna have readers that are happy with you because they got into it for a certain reason, and they're reading it toward that payoff. And if you pull the rug out from under them, they may not appreciate that.
Yeah.
Jim Butcher did that to me.
Rug pulls can be interesting if you do them on purpose and you plan them well and you pull the rug at the right time. There's been a couple of incidences of rug pulls in media that I've really enjoyed, and some incidents that I really didn't. So yeah.
The thing like that happened with me and Jim Butcher is he spent like 16 books setting a tone, setting expectations for how the stories would progress, how we're building a greater narrative around this. We got to, I don't remember what the name, I know he just published another book a few weeks ago. I don't remember what it's called, but the one right before that, which may have been Battleground, I think, that one had the rug pull in it, and it absolutely broke the promise for me, and I've lost interest, which is really fucking rough because I went through a long time on that, enjoyed a whole lot of these books, and then we hit this, and there's a very, very hard change in tone, breaks the promise. You lose some readers on that every fucking time.
Yeah. We've got a couple of comments in chat. My opinion of authors is that if you can't write an ending, you can't write well. Certainly, writing an ending is a skill set, and it can be very, very difficult. Not all books, when you sit down to start them out, need you to know exactly where the ending will be, but you should have a rough idea of where you're trying to go. And for a lot of writers who are starting out, or are not as experienced, or are maybe not looking to do things sort of permanently, or are writing something that's deliberately serialized, an ending might not be something that they've ever sort of really had experience with. It can be very hard to get to the end, especially when you're starting out. It's very easy to write like the middle bits that you're most passionate about, but the ends can be difficult.
It's even worse when you get to an end and then you decide, no, wait, I need to continue.
Yes, and if you need to continue because the story requires it, and you then write a good sequel, or you have to adjust things and you give it the due attention that it needs, that's fine. If, however, you decide, oh, I've written the end, and now the company is telling me I must write more when I have literally nothing planned for this, and now we're in season 19, and everything I wrote in season 1 might as well have never happened, because
So what I'm
nobody
hearing you
cares
say,
anymore.
Red, what I'm hearing you say is that you don't want to write the 10th book in the Dying Earth series.
Correct. I do not want to write the 10th book in the Dying Earth series. Another comment we got was, I don't think people in general appreciate subversion of expectations. At the least, the twist should be hinted at prior to the rug pull. It depends on what you're doing. In many ways, that is the correct literary thing. Is things in books mean things, and foreshadowing and dramatic irony. I said the line. Foreshadowing and setting up things and having callbacks is all very good for keeping your reader invested and tightening up the believability of the world. However, there are occasions where it is fine to completely rug pull out of nowhere, so long as you deliberately set up to do it. I'm going to use an anime as a very cheap and quick example of this, because it's the one that's just immediately in my head. Escaflowne, Vision of Escaflowne. It starts out for 2 episodes as a slice of life girls sports anime, and then in the 3rd episode it's like Psych No with fantasy mecha. That was done on purpose, and it was planned and timed well enough that it was very enjoyable. An example of a series that I felt did it poorly, although I know a ton of people love it, and I'm not yucking other people's yum, but for me it didn't work. Vinland Saga. It was too many episodes and too much setup of the home life before the rug is pulled and you find out who you're actually following as the main character. I just did not care past that point, because I'd already invested time and attention in things that just weren't going to be important, and I resented that. So sometimes you can do a rug pull without doing a prior setup, and it's fine. Other times a bit more setup might be in your benefit, and that's part of being a more advanced writer, is knowing which to use when.
over the course of the year and some months that you've been doing this now, I have to
Yes.
imagine you've talked about the difference in when it comes to writers between how does Sanderson refer to them? I've
Pencils
got two pantsers and the way that
planners.
he refers to outliners was gardeners. Yes, but pantsers and outliners. I'm
Planners and
sure you've hit on
pantsers
that.
is what I've
Yeah.
always called them. And yes, we did
Yes.
we went through a huge thing with this probably about 6 months or so ago, because when we sat down with Shoal, we started with world building, and then we knew we were going to want to write a book. So I have taken the wonderful chat that we have here through the way that I handle books. I am very much a planner. I have always been a planner since I got truly invested in writing. I don't hate pantsers, but I feel like planning is beneficial. I think even pantsers can benefit from at least a little bit of planning. But, you know, pantsers have the right to exist. I am not one, though. I am a planner. I like to have things done in a certain order. I like to make notes of things as they come along. I like to tie things together. And I've actually written, and it is available in the Discord, in the auxiliary, in the resources channel in creative writing. I wrote up what we discussed, basically sort of a 2 or 3 page guide to how to plan a book, the way that I do it. Obviously, I've written this as an unpublished person, but, you know, we went through that. We bullet pointed out, we talked about act structures, bullet pointed out what we wanted to have happen, and that's what's been allowing us to continue writing our book every week, is we know where we're going. We have a roadmap.
Bowser is pointing out, when we say pantsers, we do mean talking about flying by the seat of your pants.
Correct, yes.
I will say that I have taken this set of advice and I've set out to write. Then the war started and the Fire Nation attacked, and I got sidetracked, but I do plan on continuing, and I will deliver at some point something resembling a literary work.
What I hope will be of benefit to you is, because you've had to have this interruption because life just refuses to stop being interesting times around the world at the minute. Hopefully, if you're going through the sort of planner way of doing things, if you get interrupted and have to come back to something, I find it makes it a lot quicker to get back into the groove without you losing your unique voice and having to rediscover that and make sure everything ties together. I find planning helps with that as well.
Now, the one thing I do want to say here is that Red is advocating for the planning part of it and the outlining, but you also don't have to do that.
No, you absolutely don't.
There is merit to the pantsing way of doing it, and some people do that, and some people are very successful doing that. And if you find a way that works for you, that's what you should actually pursue.
It can be very beneficial.
Yes.
I mean, Ed's just made a really good point here. Planners need more motivation than pantsers. Pantsers get gratification and momentum faster. Certainly that can be part of it. And in my experience and from what I've seen of people that, you know, I've been around. And again, I'm not a professional. I don't have a degree in any of this. We're just here because I happen to be very passionate about writing. And you know, here we are. Pantsers, I do tend to, I think, find it easier to be more emotionally close to what they're writing and the effect it will have on a reader and what they want to bring across, because they are in the moment, in the vogue, just doing the thing. Whereas when you're planning, there's a ton of benefits to it, but it can make you feel one stage more removed from your original core idea, and I think it's possible to lose some of the emotional closeness that you might have otherwise. So there are benefits to both.
Yeah, there is one other thing that pantsers absolutely have an advantage in, though.
What's that?
Well, they're able to much more quickly break the French lines and not have to go through the forest of Ardennes.
That is fair. That is very fair.
There you go, everybody. There's your pun for the day.
My writing habits is a blend of pants and plan. I start with an idea, what scenes I need to
It's
happen.
It's always a blend. No matter how much you are on one side or the other of the spectrum, it is always some level of a blend.
Yes.
So when we say you are one or the other, you're somewhere on this spectrum of this where...
It's a spectrum. He said the line. It's a spectrum.
I didn't know I had a line to say, but I said the line.
You did. Well done.
No. That's it. Okay, we've covered it. Now I need to say a line. No, wait. Already used grid coordinates on this stream. We've all said the line.
We're good.
We
We're
can
good.
talk
We've met our
freely now.
quota.
Yes, that's it. We're good.
Erica says, in my opinion, the best way to write is the one that gets you writing. I mean, overcoming the blank
Yes.
page is the most important thing. That is the first and most important thing that you need to
Any
do.
painted miniature is a good miniature. Any filled
Correct.
page is a good page.
Yes, and it's a lot easier to edit something that exists than to edit something you've never bothered to write down. And for the whole sort of spectrum between planning and pantsing, my trilogy, when I first sat down to write it and I first started planning things out, I knew what was going to happen and I knew what the end was going to be. I knew what shape that was going to look like, and it was going to be great. Then I actually started writing the prose, and by the time I got with my very rough draft, my first rough draft, I got to the end of the trilogy, I was like, no, this has completely changed. The nice happily ever after I expected leading into the epilogue that would cover this, that, and the other. No, this needs to have a little bit of bittersweet added into it, and my ending changed. And that was because the pantser in me knew the emotive feel of my original plans were not correct. So, you know, even with my advocacy for planning, I still pants it when it's important to do so.
I will,
And-
however, put out that if we're already on the subject of literary and writing advice, listen to Lady Red, read whatever you wrote out loud,
Yes.
at least once.
Yes.
You don't have to be an audiophile to do that, but listening to it, if it doesn't make sense to you, the writer, out loud, at least once. Yeah. Also, be kind to yourself. Don't. You'll get better. It takes.
That's true.
practice.
Yes.
Going
Evolution
back,
is a thing.
I want to hit on two things real quick. One, as we're talking about writing and editing. So I'm pretty sure I've mentioned this at various points. My lovely wife has a PhD in English literature, and she taught at the college level for 15,
She would be so
16
much
years.
better at this stream than I am.
At some point, I would love to get the two of you on the same call and just let you talk about it. But the one thing that she would tell her students every time was, generally, people are terrible writers, but they're fantastic editors. So get something written down, and then you can polish it. Because until you have something to polish, you don't have anything to do.
Yeah. I think my biggest piece of advice to the world is read what you wrote out loud, either to yourself or to others. But that is also fantastic advice. Write something
Yes.
down and build from there.
And on the note of write and you're going to get better, I'm going to go back to Sanderson one more time here.
Sure.
He will tell you that before he had his first book sold, he had written 12 other books.
Yeah,
And
that tracks.
none of them got published. They were just all sharpening his skills up to the point that he had one that was fit for publishing.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, that comes with practice, that comes with work, and that comes with familiarity with your own style, with your subject matter, and your editing process, and all that stuff. You're not going to get there if you don't put the work in.
No.
Yep.
But art evolution is real, and any art that you start, if you keep plugging away at it, you will, just by sheer exposure to whatever the thing is that you're doing, even without any outside, impetus, you will get better at that art form. Now, of course, the more outside impetus you allow to pour into you to draw from, the quicker that can go, especially if you're able to keep the line between what you should take influences from versus what you shouldn't. And that's partly what we do here, but yeah. Never say how many
I'm
books
going
are in your
to-
series. Yeah, this is one of the reasons why I like to world build the way that I do, is I like to create settings, and maybe sometimes a setting that I've had input on will have only one story that ever happens within its bounds. Maybe it'll have 15, 20, and some of them will all be linked to each other. I don't know. What matters is I have somewhere that I think is cool, that I can express my thoughts and the nature of humanity and etc. through, and that's fine. That's fine. If you don't have to,
Yeah,
you don't have to publish. If you enjoy writing as a thing, that is enough reason to write. Correct. Not everybody has to publish. I am in the very beneficial position at the stage I'm in life that I have the wonderful chat here who listens to my nonsense every week. I have great friends in the Legion and the Orcs who are interested in the stuff that I write. And for me, that will be enough. I might at some point try to self-publish my trilogy because I'm just passionate about it. I'm not expecting it to sell units. I'm not expecting to be able to submit it to one of the big 6 publishing houses and they'll pick it up. But, you know, it'll exist and that's really all I need. And that's fine. That is fine.
And Siley is pointing out Pat Rothfuss. Yeah. Pat Rothfuss and Martin are never going to finish those big series. Sorry, guys.
Yes. All right.
Pat Rothfuss wrote a series called The Kingkiller Chronicles.
Mm-hmm.
The first book was Name of the Wind. I don't remember what the second book was. And the third book was supposed to be the last one. That was Doors of Stone. He published the second book like 15 years ago. And his publisher has given up on him. He's never finishing that fucking book.
Okay.
Because he effectively wrote himself into a corner and let it go to print.
That's a shame. But these are the stories we live with.
It's true. Let's see.
Alrighty. Do we want to move on to some of the... Go.
I was going to say, at some point we start something different, don't we, in this stream?
Yes, we've had a much longer rant than usual this week, but that was intentional because we finally were able to match things up. But I do have some shoal we can look at this week. I have started writing chapter 7, if chat would like me to read that to them.
Very quickly, I did drop the link to the Sanderson lecture playlist. It is pinned in chat right now. Absolutely worth listening to if you have the time. He will break down the process in a way that you've probably never really thought about before. It may, in fact, ruin prose for you, because once I really became aware of the structure of a lot of this stuff, it got to where I was predicting things that would happen in a book well before we got to them, and sometimes that just absolutely ruins it.
That happens with any kind of art where you know what's going on under the hood.
Yeah.
As much as I absolutely adore much of the art that I consume and enjoy and look at and wish that I was that competent, even with artists who are vastly technically, I'm not saying this to put myself down, but legitimately people who are technically superior than me on many levels with their art, I can see where they've made mistakes. I would make infinitely more mistakes than they did, but I can see where they've made mistakes.
Building on that very quickly, I discovered Alex Ross's YouTube channel this week.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to assume you're familiar with Alex Ross.
No.
Okay, Alex Ross is an artist, and most of the time people would quantify him as being a comic book artist, and I would tell you that that's not in the slightest an adequate description, because he doesn't draw and cut. He paints every page, oil paint largely, and hyper realistic, and it's fucking stunning every time. Like, if you are familiar with the I want to add all kinds of accolades to this, but I'll just say the graphic novel Kingdom Come. That's Alex Ross.
Nice.
And he was talking at one point, this video was a few years old, that over one particular Christmas break, he effectively got bored and decided to make a piece of art that was the character Captain Marvel / Shazam, whatever you want to call him, and then work in every character he could think of that was in some way inspired by this character, which is a fucking lot. And he did it in the appropriate art style for every character he put in there, which is ungodly.
Wow.
So that you have like Warner Brothers-esque animated style sitting next to photorealism. But then he got into how he colored it, and I was just fucking stunned. because a lot of his work that's been published has been oil paintings, which by itself is impressive. And then some of his other stuff, I've been working with gouache lately and watercolors because that lets you occasionally fix a mistake rather than having to wait for something to happen with an oil paint. That's cool. And then he gets into this and it's like, yeah, I was working on this and I decided I just wanted to knock it out quick, so I did colored pencils and markers. And it fucking looks like oil paint. How in the fuck?
Yep, some people just have an amazing grasp of mediums, and although they'll have a favourite, they are more than capable of doing beyond the average with other stuff, and it's incredible. It's absolutely incredible when you run into somebody who can do that in whatever, walk of life it might be.
And at some point, I will send you some of that, especially if
Please
you
do.
haven't actually read Kingdom Come. Like, I may just send you that book because it's worth it. Okay. Now, as much as I hate to break up the party, I have to get ready to fly to Texas.
Yeah,
and
you should go and do that. And
I don't wanna
I know, but you have to.
grumble.
You have to. I will, in fact, give you back to the world. You are no longer kidnapped. You may leave.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Lichter, Red, thanks for putting up with me. Chat, give them hell.
Oh, they will. They will. Alrighty. Oh my goodness, Anka is dreaming, and I can't click on things because Anka is dreaming and she is kicking me, and this is adorable. Okay, if I do that, there we go. Okay, now you guys have got just us. I believe
Yes.
Parallax is headed to Texas for work reasons, so we wish him the best. Don't fall out of the sky.
Yes. No dying.
Yes.
It's practically against the rules.
Alrighty. Do we want to read
Alright,
some
so-
Shoal stuff? Do we want to read some Hungry Like the Wolf stuff? What do we want to do? We've got basically an hour. We had a lot to talk about this week. That was good.
I think chat gets to decide this one, and if they can't make up their mind, I will step forward.
Doctor Who
Be
is
the
suggesting
dictator.
Shoal. We will see what else pops up. If I read the Shoal section and then we have a little bit of time left, I might read you one of the sections that I wrote in Hungry Like the Wolf to close out, because I did get to write some fun stuff this week. I hope you guys will like it. I did write one chapter drunk. I went back and attempted to edit it sober, but I let most of the drunk ideas stay, and I think you might enjoy it. So why don't we do that? I will move over to Shoal. Alrighty, we will want chapter 7. Here we go. So the last time we left off, we had our young Arkia girl had found her way to the camp and had been telling stories about Chorax. Then her father arrived and sort of confirmed that the area was dangerous, let them know that there have been pirates in the area recently, and then she went home. And that was kind of where we left off. I will now read on from there. Chapter 7. There was no true night in Chorax, not the way Jake's body still wanted to imagine it. This far down, darkness was a constant fact rather than an event. Shoal's night was a matter of agreed cycles, of labour and rest and meal periods and watch rotations. A social tide, not a celestial one. Even so, the camp changed when most of its occupants slept. The cooker dimmed to a banked heat. Shared work lights lowered to a soft perimeter glow. Echo's drones folded themselves close against her hull or settled into quiet patrol loops just beyond the edge of camp. Their little status lights blinking like patient stars. Jabra took the first standing watch and her men the second. Then the shifts changed. The plaza's old stones held the expedition the way a cupped hand held rainwater. Precariously, but well enough. That shouldn't say long, that should say well. Let's fix that. Jake did not sleep straight through. He woke once to the faint vibration of Echo's shroud shifting around the camp, old and steady as a heartbeat. He woke again to a quiet exchange outside his hab. Jabra's rough alto trading clipped words with the shallow water ceratinoid on watch, both of them checking perimeter nodes with the kind of caution that only came from experience. Somewhere farther off, something living in the city clicked twice and went silent. Then eventually, Kilo nudged him for his own watch. "Jacob," she said into the warm dark of his implant, "your shift with Hodaka begins in 15 minutes. Please rejoin the world." He surfaced out of sleep with a low groan, blinked up at the dim curve of his hab ceiling, and briefly considered pretending to be dead. He muttered something impolite, swung his legs out of the bunk, and began the slow ritual of climbing back into the day. Or day, in the camp's chosen sense. The little kitchen niche yielded up a hot cup of something caffeinated and criminal. He drank it standing in the moonpool room, half awake, staring at the open throat of the cradle where his suit waited like an enormous patient insect. By the time he slid back into the exosuit and felt his senses blink out and return through borrowed armour, he was tired, but functional. Outside, Chorax waited exactly as it had before. Silent towers in the dark, work lights at the plaza perimeter, the thin scar in the song that never really went away. Hodaka was already there, drifting a little above the old road with the restless ease of someone who didn't entirely understand the concept of standing still. His harness straps were neat, his weighted tail wraps dark against the old stone, and his shroud brightened the moment he spotted Jake emerging from the pool. "Good waking," he called softly. "You look almost alive." "Harsh," Jake said, but smiled despite himself. Hodaka flicked his tail in mock solemnity. "I am a warden. Harsh is part of the uniform." It was quieter out here than it had been during the camp setup or dinner. The expeditioners who slept did so inside their habs or shell nests, their shrouds banked small and dim. The ones on late cycle watch moved with that delicate softness of people trying not to wake anyone unless it was necessary. A Podland quartermaster shape was visible through the half-translucent wall of one habitat bubble, apparently sleeping upright in a basin. Talia's smaller frame was attached to a maintenance line near Echo, fully asleep in her suit, one hand still resting on a diagnostics housing like she had simply run out of wakefulness mid-check. Nick remained in his full rest posture. He crouched near the plaza edge, great claw folded in, biolights dimmed to a low patrol green that moved slowly across his plating in pulse patterns Jake was starting to recognise as sleep rhythms, rather than alert code. The avenue beyond him disappeared into the city's dark like a held breath. Jake drifted up beside Hodaka and matched his pace as they began their slow patrol along the nearest stretch of broken road. They didn't talk at first. There was a kind of peace to the watch. The old city still felt wrong, yes, but less aggressively so in these hours when no one expected it to reveal anything. The currents had eased from their heavier pressure shelf movements of earlier. What life remained nearby had settled into its own rhythms. Tiny things glittered in the dark. Once, a long ribbon-bodied eel drifted past in the middle distance, took one look at Echo and Nick and the lit cluster of camp, and sensibly changed its mind about being interested. Jake let his shroud widen a fraction, feeling Hodaka's presence beside him, the old patient tide of Echo, and Nick's sleeping but unmistakably present mind, the thinner background murmur of the camp. After a while he said, "Can I ask you something strange?" Hodaka turned his head at once. "Always." Jake glanced towards Nick. "When you pilot him," he said, then corrected himself, "when you join him, I guess, what does it actually feel like?" Hodaka's expression shifted instantly. Curiosity brightened. Pleasure too, the pleasure of being asked about something he loved by someone he thought might actually care about the answer. "It is piloting, that word is fine. But you mean not the pride," he said, "not the honour." "Yeah," Jake said, "not the career speech. I mean, what happens in your shroud? In your head? In all of it? Humans don't have anything like Titans, and most of us don't have shrouds. I'm curious." For once, Hodaka did not answer immediately. They drifted on in silence for a few body lengths while he looked for the shape of it. The water around them moved in slow, dark folds. From the plaza behind them came the tiny metallic chirr of one of Echo's drones resettling on its anchor point. Then Hodaka exhaled through his gills and said, very quietly, "It starts like tingling." Jake looked at him. "All through me," Hodaka said, hands spreading as if that might somehow help. "Not skin, not exactly nerves, more like my whole self realises there is another rhythm close by and starts trying to answer it. Nick's choral begins to resonate and I feel it in my own shroud first. Like the first note of a song that you know, even if you have not sung it yet." He gave a little embarrassed laugh. "That sounds too pretty," he admitted. "But it is true." "No," said Jake, "keep going." Hodaka's shroud warmed at that, and he did. "When concordance really catches," he said, "it becomes a rush. Excitement from him, excitement from me, all of it climbing at once. His awareness wakes wider, mine stretches. His hands came together slowly, fingers lacing and then relaxing apart again. The first instant always feels like falling into step with something larger than I am. Not being swallowed by it, just suddenly moving in a scale bigger than my own body. Jake frowned slightly, following. Nick feels distance differently than I do, Hordaka said. Weight, momentum, how a current will hit a broad plate versus a hand. Through him, I know how to move 26 feet of Titan in water without thinking, because his coral knows and lends the knowing. Through me, he knows mechanical response in shoaly time. His coral wakes up along the lines of my thoughts so that his pond's connections can move, and he can process everything we see and hear and feel together at the same speed you and I are thinking and moving our bodies now. He grinned. Two things becoming one for a while, and still very clearly two things the whole time. That, said Jake softly, sounds incredible. It is, Hordaka said at once. It is everything. The first rush settles, and then there is just rightness. Him alive around me, me alive inside him. We are each ourselves, but there is no need to explain. I move and he understands why. He thinks and I feel his plates are already answering. It makes me feel fast even when we're standing still. Jake let that sink in. It was so different from the human model of piloting that his brain kept trying to reach for analogies and failing. Not AI assistance, not mere interface. Not quite like dancing either, though that felt closer. There was too much personhood in it, too much mutual excitement. He trusts you, Jake said after a while. Hordaka looked genuinely startled by how obvious Jake found it. Yes, he said, of course. Titans do not work if they do not have some kind of connection with their pilot. They drifted on. The old road sloped gently away from the plaza and passed between two low broken structures that had once been shops or civic alcoves. Echo's work lights only reached this far in a soft bleed. Beyond that, the city returned to its own bioluminescent logic of muted greens and the occasional unsettling orange. Sediment lay in low drifts along the curb lines. A tower far off in the ring leaned like a black tooth against the thinner dark. And you trust him, Jake added. Hordaka's response was immediate and uncomplicated. With my whole shroud. That might have been the end of the conversation. It should have been, maybe, the kind of answer that sat in the water and deserved a little silence around it. Instead, Hordaka's next words cut off halfway through whatever he had meant to say. His body changed first. Not dramatically, just a tightening, tail still, hands pausing in mid-gesture. His shroud, which had been spread a little wide from excitement, snapped close and then flared again in a shape Jake had already learned to recognise as alert. At the same time, Jake tilted his head. Because there was something there. Not Hordaka, not Echo, not the weak, stretched remnant of Shoal's song, muted from lack of coral around Chorax. Something else. He heard it, though heard was wrong. It was like finding another melody under the first, thin and wrong and moving in a pattern that didn't fit any living thing nearby. Not quite a shroud, not quite silence. A different kind of song, as if the song had gone offbeat and shifted major into minor. Hordaka, Jake said very quietly. I know, Hordaka snapped. Then, before Jake could do more than turn his suit's sensor suite towards the dark between the ruins, Hordaka surged forward, grabbed one of the harness rails on Jake's chest plate, and hauled him bodily around. Back, he barked, loud enough this time to hit camp channels. Back, back, back! Alarm! Jake's suit compensated hard as the Latical's strength yanked him offline. His boots kicked up silt. The HUD flashed, recalculating vectors, highlighting the avenue behind them in bright retreat arrows. Silence! Hordaka shouted into the shared net, all trace of good humour gone. Close! Moving! Camp detonated awake. What had been dimmed bank rest turned instantly into motion. Echo's shroud surged wide and cold as deep water, all patience gone. Nick came out of sleep like a weapon remembering its purpose, biolights snapping from soft green to patrol white in one hard sweep. Direction! Magarel's voice cut across everything, clipped and absolute. She was still inside camp, but through Echo it felt like she was suddenly everywhere. Give me direction, Hodaka. North Avenue, second break from Plaza. Hodaka hauled Jake the last few body lengths into the perimeter lights and shoved him behind the nearest filter node before turning back himself. Small signature, maybe a knot, maybe more. I have it, Echo said. Her drones launched. They didn't explode outwards so much as unfurl, slipping off her hull in a smooth, coordinated bloom. 6 of them at once, then 2 more. Their little lights cut through the dark in spreading fans, with their own thin linked shrouds stitched between them into Echo's awareness. Jake stayed where Hodaka had planted him, breathing harder than the exertion warranted. The wrong song was still there, faint but unmistakable now that he knew to listen for it. Sombre, reedy, but unmistakably there. Why is there quiet moving around at all? Jake demanded, not really expecting an answer. 'Cause Chorax is haunted, if our little Archaea friend was right, Jabra said, somewhere to his left, already armed and fully awake. Talia was at the filter board in seconds, checking the nearest line for contamination. Her voice, suddenly stripped of all youthfulness, began reading off baseline psionic noise values from camp. Umi moved to the edge of the plaza. Thank you, Sarah, it's very helpful. And widened his shroud not to touch the blip, but to feel the absence around it more clearly, a face gone hard with focus. Nick, Echo said. I am awake, Nick replied. Hodaka was on him in a blink. Jake felt the first catch of concordance from where he crouched. It was sharper than in Hodaka's story. No dreamy wonder now, just the clean ignition of 2 selves locking together under pressure. Nick's already bright patrol shroud snapped into something far more dangerous. Hodaka's joy was still there, buried under the adrenaline, but duty had the wheel. Nick straightened to full height, claw flexing once, and the whole plaza seemed to realign around him. Vector acquired, Echo said through 3 different channels at once. Small colony, not anchored, no visible source structure. That was the worst part somehow. No nest, no obvious bloom, just a little knot of quiet moving through the dead city like it belonged there. Cleansing agent, Echo ordered. Pattern 3, forward break and wash, do not oversaturate the water. Nick launched. Not fast enough to be reckless, but so decisively that Jake felt the current hit him a second later. The Warden crossed half the avenue in 3 long bounds, shoulder hard points irising open as he moved. Not weapons in the ordinary sense. Delivery nozzles, pressure-fed and precise. Equipment mounted for this specific expedition, for this specific purpose. There, Kilo said sharply into Jake's implant and threw a marker onto his HUD. For an instant he saw it. Tiny things. Not one big monster, not a dramatic bloom crawling over the walls. A drifting cluster of pale, particulate life threaded together in a filament cloud, almost invisible except where Echo's drone lit it from the side. It moved wrong. Not like plankton. Not like silt. It was seeking. Jake's stomach turned. Pattern 3 deployed, Nick announced. A fan of cleansing agent burst from his shoulder mount in a controlled white arc, blooming through the water ahead of the drifting colony. Not fire, not acid, something finer, a chemical glitter laced with anti-quiet treatments and scrubbing compounds. The pale knot hit the cloud and convulsed. Jake didn't know if convulsed was scientifically fair, but it felt right. The moving wrongness recoiled in on itself, little threads curling and knotting as the wash disrupted whatever hungry lattice held them together. Again, Echo said. Nick adjusted angle by fractions and gave it another pulse, narrower this time. The drones tightened their circle, feeding him vectors. One dipped too close, sampled the dispersal and snapped back out. The colony broke. What had looked like one drifting blight came apart into several smaller clusters, each trying to move in a different direction. Echo's drones tagged them with cold precision. Nick swept another wash through the avenue, catching 2. A third slipped under a ledge where old stone met reef. Left fissure, Umi said instantly, his widened shroud brushing the dead edge of its wake without touching the thing itself. It's trying to hide. Not for long, Hodaka said through Nick's speakers, and there was fierce delight in him now, not because this was danger, but because he and Nick were doing what they had been made to do. Nick dropped to one knee, great claw bracing against the old road, and sent a needle-fine jet into the fissure. A moment later, a puff of pale dead matter bloomed out of the crack like rotten dust. Kill confirmed, Echo said. Silence came down in pieces after that. Not complete silence. Chorax would never manage that anymore. But the wrong song persisted. Jake realised his hands were clenched hard inside the suit and forced them open. Residuals drifting, Kilo said, a fraction too bright with her own version of stress. Recommend nobody touch anything for a bit. Excellent recommendation, Magarel said. Echo's tendrils moved before anyone else did, extending with neat, terrible calm. 2 drones switched modes and dropped to collection posture. Little sample cages unfolded from their undersides. With the avenue still cloudy from the cleansing wash, they gathered the dead remnants of the colony out of the water one by one. Filaments, particulate clumps, anything larger than the finest dust. No source? Jabber asked, voice low. None visible, Echo said. No active node in range. No feeder structure. No recent disturbance sufficient to explain emergence. That's really strange, Talia whispered from the filter board. Umi eased his shroud back in at last, every line of him still alert. It was small, he said. A scout colony, maybe. Or a fragment detached from something larger. No one liked that. Jake looked back down the avenue. The old road lay just as it had a few minutes earlier. Broken stone, drifting silt, bioluminescent threads in the cracks. If not for the withering plume of cleansing wash and the drones at work, nothing about it would have said danger. That bothered him more than if it had come with screaming and rot. Camp status, Echo said. People reported in. No contamination, no breaches. No symptomatic shroud dimming beyond ordinary alarm response. The filter nodes held clean. Nick's wash had stayed in bounds. Only once she had every answer did Echo let the tension in her own shroud settle even a fraction. Good, she said. Stand down to yellow alert. We will maintain closer watch on the North Avenue until next cycle. Samples will be examined before any morning excursion leaves camp. Jake spoke only after it seemed everyone was about to return to normal duties. No one had mentioned the off song. What about the second song? Is that something we should worry about? Heads turned his way. Suddenly, he had the entire expedition looking at him. What second song? Jabber asked, gruff as ever. Around her, many of the expedition took on an expression Jake had become familiar with in his time on Shoal. Bemused tolerance of his alien ignorance. There's a thin, off-key song. It's real quiet and it feels like the normal song, just different. You can't hear it? No, Jabra laughed. I think the silence has spooked you silly, Softshell. Breakfast should clear it up. Wait. Umi cut in and drifted up in front of Jake. Jake is not a child nor a tourist. He is a scientist on his home world and now here. Perhaps he senses something we do not. With respect, Counsellor, Mr. Salvio does not have the depth of shroud we do. This seems unlikely. Yes, it is unlikely, but I definitely hear something. I can hear the song, and under it, a second song. It's coming from Chorax. It's thin, but I can hear it. Jake turned his head and pointed. It's coming from that way. His suit arm pointed out over the opposite side of the plaza from the previous day's excursion. That heads towards the Grand Temple, Mag said, looking thoughtful. Perhaps you do perceive something. I do not. Our morning excursion should head in that direction anyway. The temple will be of interest. The quiet may have come from that direction too, which we should also investigate. Carefully. The group nodded. Umi's eyes stayed on Jake for Umi's eyes stayed on Jake for a few long moments. Then he drifted back as the camp moved towards organising breakfast. Do not let doubt keep you silent, Jake. When we venture out, I wish to know what you hear, even if we do not hear it also. I'll try. I can definitely hear something. It didn't fluctuate when the quiet came. It's just there. Then, my friend, we shall go and find it. Wonderful, Kilo supplied, rolling over next to Jake in a full turn. You have discovered a siren song. I will compose a ballad in your honour. And that was as far as I got with 3 hours' work this morning.
That was great. I have a question.
What is your question?
That perhaps Ed is best at answering, but I will ask it nevertheless. can Kilo matriculate Jake's brain to extrapolate what he's hearing?
Oh, in terms of the second song,
Yeah.
I don't know. Usually, mechanicals can't pick up shroud stuff, but if she's receiving Jake's thoughts and perceptions, he could be the vector that lets her understand. Definitely an Ed question.
I agree. It's just that brainwaves, neuron composition. I don't need to explain it. We can ignore it, but it's a question that we should possibly address, considering the sort of people who are going to read that. They're like, why isn't the neural interface AI not doing a scan and figuring this one out?
Okay, Ed is saying that yes, this conversation was one he had before, and he's with where you are. Kilo is aware of Jake's shroud. Cool. So Kilo can confirm that Jake is hearing this. Excellent. I'll add that in. That would be a great element to add in, and adds more believability to people trusting him.
It's not critique. It's just
No,
it's
it's
genuine
good thoughts.
curiosity.
Yeah, and good thoughts. It's a thought that can be used in this in a meaningful way. I am all about these things. I always like hearing feedback from you guys.
Okay, well, that's cool.
All right, well, what I'm going to do for just a second is if chat has anything it wants to say about what I just read, but please feel free to throw it in. I'm going to leave you in charge for just a minute, Lichter, because I'm going to use the restroom, and I'm going to take the dogs out to do the same, because Ceres is asking. And then when I come back, we'll do a little bit more, stream shenanigans before it's time for us to be out of here.
Very good. Yes.
I will be back in a minute.
Ed, come on. Relax. All right. Nope. Human brain too tough. Wild applause. I like it. Yes, Dr. So do I. I really do. My thought process is that a neural interface has to have a complete understanding of what's going on, and otherwise they could not be performing what they were performing. It's all about transition of information from point A to point B. Dear God, 47 months. 47 months. Most of it spent with you guys. So, what did you think? Can you guys helped plan this thing out? White husks, a quiet swarm. Quiet swarms have a name, I think. I think it's the doldrums. And they are fucking terrifying because they are a horde of leeches that cling to you and eat into your neural network. It's even worse if you can't defend yourself because you are a coral. You're a living being. The only upside of being a living being that you're usually small enough for them to be finished quickly. A doldrum swarm can be horrific. Though it could be a doldrum. I swear I know English. Doldrums bloom fast. It's like low cost. It's like low cost. Low cost. How do you call that? And then cordyceps. Oh. Okay. What, Eric? I see where you're going with it. I understand the zombie concept, but what sort of quiet has adapted so far to be attacking not coral, which is inherently mobile, but to attack things that are, mobile by definition. How do you think that happened? Leaving, of course, aside the concept of I don't know, salation gene engineers and bio wizards doing terrifying war crimes, like let's weaponize the one thing that can eat all of us in our sleep just by existing. Red has been away for 5 minutes and we are discussing war crimes on a global scale. I'll just point out, and Zork hasn't said a word. So, just saying.
I am back. What did I miss?
War crimes on a level even Zork would find appreciate.
Oh no.
Dr. Drosophila, thank you, dear proof of highlight. Things that are mobile when you yourself are relatively not so some like parents and the victim ingests his lover's dead. Okay. I mean, Delta T, yes, it is relatively normal. Red steps away for 5 seconds. I get to say 7 words, and everybody else like, hey, let's invent a zombie swarm of quiet.
1 week we'll have a stream without a single war crime happening.
Yes, there has been a Borg.
Not this week, however. Yes, that was Anka. Because in typical dog fashion, I took all of the dogs out to pee, and the one dog who had asked to go out to do their business is the one who did nothing. Looking at you, Saris. And once we come back in, there has to be a balkaning to make sure we've all got the spots that we want to lay back down and go to sleep.
Top Doggy has redeemed a pet.
I am currently petting the Pip. He is laying on my hip. I'm giving him scruffle scritches, which is his favourite thing. He is very happy. He is giving me his big old goofus doofus grin. Is that nice?
Very good.
Is that nice? Top Doggy says you can have these fusses. Yes. Yes, say thank you. He's just grinning
Very
at
good.
me. Yeah, nobody can stop chat from war criming. Pip on my hip by Dr. Zeus. Yes, I have a pip on my hip.
Yes, pip on your hip.
All right, boy. Put your head down. I don't need to be headbutted, thank you. Alrighty, so it seems like from what I'm seeing, people enjoyed where we're at with Chapter 7 so far, which is good.
Well, I am at the edge of my seat. To be honest. I am just waiting for the other shoe to fall. It's like, I know what's coming, and I'm like,
Yeah, so we have our notes that we made last week, because unfortunately I just did not get to as much Shoal as I would like to. I have been hyper busy with the writing consulting project that I'm working on. I really want to get Hungry Like the Wolf finished by the end of this month, like I promised, so I've been writing a ton of that. But I did at least get some done on Shoal, which I'm pleased about. But in our next notes, we have... Go ahead.
you wrote 40,000 words of Ilkhan Ward, and they kissed at the end, okay? The amount of criminality involving in the sentence, it just went out of my mouth.
I've got a
Okay,
chapter past that point as well now, and got to the point where, you know, the insinuation of future bedtime shenanigans has actually been dropped. And once again, I really hope it's going to come across this way to you guys when you read it, but when I got there I was like, this feels right, this feels earned, this is the point where we can now say this and it doesn't feel like it's coming out of goddamn nowhere like a sniper's bullet. This feels fine, and Ilkhan Ward is involved in this and I feel strange.
Look, you've been powering through what most of us would be considering a traumatizing combination of Slanesh and Zinch weaving something through your brain. So,
I really hope you guys are going to enjoy what I've done with Hungry Like the Wolf when you get the whole thing in your in your hands. I have also von Falkenstein. I have written that scene as well. We are on the far side of the Founding Day parade with the attack from Clan Hell's horses, which does happen on Clan Wolf Base. And I think, because what I wanted to do, I really wanted to keep all of the beats that are in the original book, and just I wanted to write not just to amuse you guys, not just to challenge myself, not just to practice writing in a style I don't normally, but I've criticized this book really heavily. I have criticized this book really, really heavily, and the people involved in it, etc. And made a whole big joke about, you know, this is half-ass shit posting, whereas here at the BPL we whole-ass shit post. And I say this not in terms of trying to denigrate anybody, but, you know, because we're just here to have a fun time. But I wanted to kind of make sure that the primary thing I did with this was put my money where my mouth was and take the same tools that Christina F. York was working with, but rework them in a way that I feel is better using my understanding of literature, so that I'm using the exact same frame and tools, maybe adding a few things into it, but trying to make it better without stripping out what makes it uniquely Hungry Like the Wolf. Changing the plot too much, missing those big plot beats, at that point I'd just be writing a different book, and I didn't want to do that. So we do still have the Clan Hell's Horses attack on Clan Wolf Base, but I've tried to make sure that there is enough narrative foreshadowing put in and justification put in that it doesn't feel so stupid. It doesn't feel like, and then suddenly there was just an attack on the base and nobody noticed it or reported about it. I did sort of, you know, add some hints in earlier that there are some fractures in the perimeter of the place. I did go one full joke with the Stealth Atlas, because how can you not? There's no explaining away the Stealth Atlas. It just happens, which is what, you know, you guys kind of wanted me to do because it would be funny. But I did try to put, you know, just a little bit more grounding justification in there. So hopefully, you know, when you guys read the absolute nonsense I've been writing, it will feel enjoyable to read through and not like a very slow torture session, which was kind of where I was at by the time I got to the end of this book.
You promised in your own words
Yes.
that if we were good kids and
Yes.
did only slight war crimes and not complete war crimes, then we might get a peace.
I think you did a
Before
complete
you're
war crime, but I'll read you a piece anyway because you are being nice.
I can do another one if you want to. I know how to. I have a diploma.
I didn't, Wilf, I didn't put in it's holding up a tree in front of its face pretending to be a forest, but I did put in something that's similar enough that I think you'll approve, because I do listen to you guys. When you give me ideas that you want fit into this book, I have tried to work in every single one it's possible for me to do so. I think I've been kind of clever in how I've solved some of those problems and fit your stuff in. In other places, I've just been absolutely rampantly dumb. And that's
Pay our
what this
bills,
project
fucko.
should have been from square one. It's just absolutely unrepentantly dumb, not just a collection of bad romance tropes that don't do anything with themselves. So, would you like some Hungry Like the Wolf this week before we close?
As a treat.
As a treat, or are you all going to flee, chat? Doctor Who says yes.
I will hold them down. It's a holding pattern now. If you flee, the quiet will come. Yes, Drosophila, we have been. Also, how many eyes do you have, Drosophila? I'm asking for science reasons and to prove evolution. Can you make 300,000 more of yourself? I need to...
There was a chat this week about me potentially being a clone, and I should maybe be concerned about that. This week has been strange. This week has been very strange.
It is widely accepted that I am a clone.
We were debating your existence before you popped into chat for stream today. And Parallax and I came... We came to the decision that so long as we believe in you hard enough, you definitely exist, and therefore it's fine.
I agree. I like to exist. I like existing. I'm a normal human and I only have 2 eyes, not able to taste with my feet.
All right, I'm going
Very
to
good.
close Shoal so that we hop over to Hungry Like the Wolf, which means you're going to get a very brief flick of my art program as usual. There is nothing exciting on it this time. I'm sorry.
I am not a fey creature.
Manifested the
I
lick
am-
talk, something like that. Something like that. There we go. There's the flick, and now we're over.
Yes.
Ed is just a
Rewrite.
figment of my imagination. I have the best imagination. Rampantly dumb is what we do best. Yes, yeah, rampantly dumb is in fact what we do best. I've also put an introduction on this thing now so that once this actually goes into a thing that can be passed around and given to people, there is some explanation for why this rewrite exists, and that's what you're currently looking at. Yeah, no, imagination's great and writing's great. This reminds me of something Terry Pratchett said, and it was covered in the biography of his life after he passed. One day he went into a library and read about the concept of, a turtle swimming through space with the turtles on its back, and he walked out with that idea and nobody stopped him. And you're just allowed, you can put words in any order you want and nobody stops you. Nobody stops you. It's amazing.
I'm going to be slightly more careful about this statement in certain portions of the world, but
See, now there is some things that can come from it, but if you're just sort of writing for yourself in front of yourself and it goes nowhere else, you could just put words in any order inside your own head. You can put words in any order and nobody can stop you.
that is terrifying.
Yes! And that's why part of Rewrite Like the Wolf is the way that it is. Okay, where was the chapter with the battle pods? Was it? Because I think that's the chapter we should do.
Haven't we had the Rite of Valentine?
We did
last
have
time?
the Rite of Valentine, yes. That happened in the chapter previous to what I'm going to read today. I didn't read all of that chapter, but I did read the Rite of Valentine, where she got very upset with Ward, and they were both wearing heartprint undergarments, and a technician was going to have a very bad day.
Good.
Yes, we
Technicians
did
should be
have
having
that.
bad days.
But
I
yeah,
mean, not really.
we will do the battle pods and we will see where we get to. So this is chapter 7. Now I've done something that the original book didn't do. I have given every chapter a title because I felt like it was necessary. So this chapter is called Factory Standard Mode. Clan Wolf Base, outside Unity City, North America, nuke it from orbit, it's the only way to be sure. Terra, the Cargonate, 25th of July, 3151 at 1000 hours. I got so fed up, I worked out what day of the week these chapters are happening on, and changed them, because who has a party on a Thursday? No one wants to have to work the morning after a begrudging diplomatic function. Anyway, this would be a Saturday. I figured the weekend is a good time for Vickers to shove her idiot boss into a battle pod. Enjoy. Yes, that is in the prose. Yes, I have very much taken to using the chapter framework to just lose my mind a little bit. And yes, I did go back through the entire book, figure out what day of the week these dates would be in 3151, and retool what happens when, so they happen on sensible days of the week, without changing when Founding Day happens. I retooled the entire chronology of this book. It's been a week. The battle pod hall. Go on.
They gave you power,
They did.
and they forgot to take it back.
Yes, I have
At their
decided to use
own
my powers only for
exceeding
evil.
peril. I've noticed.
The battle pod hall had the sterile, overconfident atmosphere of a place built by engineers who believed war could be improved with better user experience. The pods themselves stood in 2 neat ranks beneath cold overhead lighting, each one shaped like a dark metal coffin designed by somebody with very strong opinions about efficiency and no meaningful understanding of comfort. Technicians moved between them with cables, datapads, and the faintly haunted expressions of men and women who spent the morning wrestling with hardware newly out of mothball. Ward stopped just inside the threshold and looked up at the illuminated sign above the pod control station. Welcome to the new Clan Wolf Combat Readiness Experience, TM. Factory Standard Mode enabled. He stared at it. Then at Vickers. No. Vickers, beside him, consulted her datapad with studied calm. The systems were in storage during the campaign, she said. They've only recently been moved back into base and reactivated for regular training. Ward continued staring at the sign. Why, he asked, does a combat simulator have a trademark symbol? Vickers did not look up. Because someone at the manufacturer hated dignity. A nearby technician coughed into his hand. Ward's gaze shifted to the nearest pod. Its external screen flickered once, then blazed to life. Now featuring Comstar Mercenary Recruitment Outreach, rebuilding trust, one contract at a time. Ward looked at it with the expression of a man contemplating whether software could be court-martialed. Comstar is all but defunct. Not according to this machine, Vickers said. The screen changed. Discount Dan's reusable ejector modules, because you might need to leave twice. Ward frowned. That is not how ejection works. The screen changed again. Visit Van Zandt, home of the Sidecorn Palace. Ward was silent for a beat. Then he allowed his brow to briefly furrow. What, he asked, is a sidecorn? Irrelevant, said Vickers. Before he could ask what possible geometry might produce sidecorn, the ad vanished beneath a final bright splash of cheerful horror. Randolph P. Checkers, old-fashioned, smooth sippin', cherry-flavoured, engine degreaser, 2-stroke red. Ward narrowed his eyes. That is... Words failed him. Yes, said Vickers. Around them, the rest of the mech warriors assigned to their stars were already climbing into their prepared pods. Today's sim was a clean mirror match. 5-on-5, same chassis, no excuses. Ward and Vickers each took a Savage Wolf. Their star mates fielded 1 Stormcrow C, 2 Arctic Wolves and 1 Ostscout apiece. Identical force packages. No machine advantage. Good, Ward thought. He stepped to his pod and laid a hand against the hull. It was not a real cockpit, not a real machine. No actual 75 tons of armour and consequence wrapped around him. No sculpted command couch that felt like home. But the sim would be close enough for what mattered. Vickers paused beside her own pod and glanced over. You are grinding your teeth again. I am experiencing software. That is not a recognised battlefield condition. It should be. She gave him a look that suggested his suffering was spiritually nourishing to her, then climbed into her pod. Ward followed suit. The interior was more comfortable than he wanted and less dignified than he expected. The restraint harness settled over him. The neurohelmet seated. Systems spun up around him in a wash of startup tones and over-designed optimism. Welcome, Ilkan. Today's scenario, star-on-star readiness evaluation. Optimal ambient settings detected. Ward shut his eyes briefly. No. Default ambience retained. A faint musical tone began in the background. Not offensive, not useful either. He keyed comms. Report. The voices of his star came back one by one, sharp and ready. Stormcrow C online. Ostscout Green. Arctic Wolf Alpha ready. Arctic Wolf Beta ready. Ward flexed his hands on the controls. Maintain discipline. Mirror opposition. No assumptions. Across the command network, Vickers' star was undoubtedly receiving the same order in different words. The sim loaded. Terrain resolved around him in a layered wireframe before hardening into something approximating a misty Pacific Northwest valley. Ridgelines, broken timber, wet ground, rocky choke points, and enough elevation change to reward brains over enthusiasm. Good again. This was a map for hunters. A map for the terrain last week's enemy had vanished into. The countdown flashed. Begin combat readiness experience. The world snapped fully into place. Ward moved first, but not quickly. Quick was easy. Quick was visible. Quick told the enemy where you believed the fight was going to happen. Instead, he walked his Savage Wolf towards a shallow rise overlooking a low ravine and sent the Ostscout wide to his right with instructions to probe but not commit. One Arctic Wolf screened left. The other he held closer, mobile reserve. The Stormcrow took the centre with him. He did not need to see Vickers' deployment to begin imagining it. That was one of the risks of facing an equal. He knew how she thought. She knew the same of him. The first sensor contacts appeared exactly where he did not intend to engage them. She was trying to drag him. Ward smiled faintly. Refuse the left, he said. Pull them deeper. His star obeyed instantly. A younger commander would have taken the contact and rushed to exploit first sighting. Ward let it breathe. Let Vickers' flank element believe it had found uncertainty. Let it move one ridge too far and reveal just enough of its support geometry behind it. There. He marked the lead Arctic Wolf with a targeting trace and said, Stormcrow, strip armour. Our scout, maintain lock. Do not commit. The first exchange of fire lit the valley in pale, hard lines. Precision, burst, return fire. He shifted position before Vickers' answering shots could fully settle, using the rise itself to bleed off exposure. Her Savage Wolf came into sight only briefly at the far edge of his scan, already repositioning. Good. She had seen the trap. Defeating her might be the point, but incompetence in his right hand would wound him worse than any simulation defeat. He pushed the left Arctic Wolf just hard enough to make it backpedal into bad footing. Not panic, not collapse, merely retreat wrong. Then his right side Arctic Wolf cut across the enemy's intended withdrawal path and forced its partner to choose between overheat and exposure. It chose exposure. Ward took the leg. The machine spun down into the mud on one knee, still technically alive but effectively useless. Kill confirmed! Ward paused. Why is it counting? Across the comms, Vickers' voice came back perfectly dry. I told you the software was degraded. He ignored the system and shifted his Savage Wolf down slope, angling towards the centre. Struck immediately. Of course she did. Her stars, Stormcrow C, came in hot through the broken timber, while her Oscout painted targeting data from higher ground. And for a few beautiful seconds, the engagement stopped being theory and became what it was meant to be. Timing, intuition, nerve. Ward let her think she had his Savage Wolf pressured on the right. She did not. He merely wanted her to believe his heat curve was worse than it was. She pressed. He gave ground exactly 3 steps. Her Savage Wolf advanced to punish what looked like a delay. That was when his second Arctic Wolf cut up from below the ridgeline and took the angle she had just emptied. Now, Ward said. Focused fire hit the enemy Stormcrow's weapon arm and stripped it down to ruin before the machine could recover its line. Simulated ammunition readouts flashed red. The pod rendered the enemy pilot technically alive, tactically humiliated. Double kill! Ward's mouth flattened. Still counting. Yes, said Vickers. She was amused. He could hear it. That was intolerable. The battle tightened. Her remaining Arctic Wolf tried to drive aggressively through the centerline terrain Ward had left looking softer than it was. He let it come. The ground there was poor, footing uneven beneath the cosmetic service rendering. The pod's simulation physics were annoyingly competent. The machine overcommitted a turn and exposed its right flank. Ward's Stormcrow hit the exposed side hard enough to cripple a weapon mount and forced the machine sideways into the path of its own Savage Wolf. For a heartbeat, Vickers' force geometry tangled. That was all he needed. Triple kill! Ward exhaled slowly. The sim, mistaking competence for bloodlust, shifted the battleground music into something more energetic. He was about to disable it when a flicker crossed the edge of his awareness, jolted into his thoughts by the saxophone now playing in the cockpit. It wasn't a commline blip. It was a voice, not present, remembered. His own. Then we will be more careful. He remembered Davendra in the ground car, refusing to look directly at him when he said it. He adjusted his line a fraction late. A warning chirped. Heart rate elevated. Possible emotional engagement detected. Suboptimal clan architecture. Seek medical assistance post-combat. Ward stared at the message. Across the comms, Vickers said, Explain? Nothing. You hesitated. I adjusted. She was silent for a beat. Then, that is not what the machine thinks. Ward suppressed the message, and a response, and put Davendra Elstone out of his mind with professional force. Physically attractive, yes. Direct, yes. Compelling, inconveniently so. Irrelevant. He drove the Savage Wolf forward and forced himself back into the clean language of terrain, armour, line of sight and bloodless decision-making. Only Vickers remained. Of course she had engineered it that way. Their starmates were now background debris in a duel neither of them had needed to announce. She was good, very good. Not merely fast, never merely aggressive. She knew exactly how much machine to risk and where. She used the valley fog to break his lock, then reappeared on higher ground with one clean shot lined up to punish his centre torso if he answered incorrectly. He answered by not taking the shot she expected. Instead, he cut low, bled speed, let her think he had trapped himself at the base of the slope, and waited for the exact moment her confidence became momentum. She pushed too hard. Not recklessly, just enough. Her Savage Wolf cleared the ridgeline at an angle that would have been ideal if he were exactly where she believed him to be. He wasn't. Ward rose from below her firing line like a machine-sized correction to fate and put a concentrated burst through the weakened structure she had been guarding with movement rather than armour. Her mech staggered. A second hit destabilised the already stressed fusion containment in one of the sim's more dramatic feedback models. Ward saw it a split second before it happened. "That is about to fail," he said. "I can compensate," Vickers stated. No. Her Savage Wolf vanished in a white-hot catastrophic brilliance. The pod rendered a towering bloom of simulated overpressure and fire, an absurdly theatrical fusion cascade that would have made any engineer angry and any novelist very happy. Mega kill! Ward closed his eyes briefly. Vickers' voice came over the comms a moment later, dry as dust. That was a fusion cascade. Yes. The battlefield froze. Systems dimmed. Then the end screen appeared. Simulation complete. Performance exemplary. Collateral acceptable. Emotional stability questionable. Ward stared at the last line. Then the next one appeared. Would you like to enable team bonding scenario? No. From across the network, Vickers said at exactly the same moment, absolutely not. The pods opened. Ward climbed out to find Vickers already on the deck, helmet off, expression composed in the particular way that meant she had opinions and intended to weaponize them. He stepped down from the pod. The software should be destroyed. The software, said Vickers, identified a performance anomaly. There was no anomaly. She looked at him. Your kill ratio remains excellent, she said. Your heat discipline was good. Your command decisions were better. A beat. You were still distracted. Ward unfastened one glove. By advertisements for engine degreaser. Vickers held his gaze. Of course. He said nothing. A technician approached cautiously from the console bank. Sir, he said, would you like us to wipe the morale package from the system? Ward looked at the pod, then at the technician. Yes. The technician swallowed. All of it, sir? Ward's eyes narrowed. A nearby screen flashed once more before anyone could stop it. Thank you for choosing the new Clan Wolf Combat Readiness Experience, TM. Please come again. Ward stared at it for a long moment. Yes, he said. All of it. Vickers folded her arms. The machine thinks you require medical attention. The machine, Ward said, is wrong. Is it? He looked at her. She did not smile. That made it worse. After a moment, Ward said, there are political delegations arriving soon. Yes. Founding Day approaches. Yes. And resistance activity is increasing. Vickers inclined her head. All true. Ward pulled his gloves back on. Then we have no time for the machine's opinions. No, said Vickers. Only yours. He turned towards the exit. Behind him, one of the pods chirped brightly. Unstoppable! He could hear the exclamation points. Ward did not look back. Burn it, he said. When he was gone, Vickers collared the nearest mech tech. Do not actually burn it. Yet. She narrowed her eyes at the exit. And get me a printout of the Ilkhan's pod diagnostics. That is the first half of the chapter that I wrote very drunk. It has not been fully edited yet, so I'm sure there are problems, but... Oh my goodness, we had a raiding party coming in the middle of that. What a time to arrive. I am so sorry.
Please fill out the...
The machine is detecting rigor mortis, something like that. Oh my goodness, I am so sorry, Raiders.
No, 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 no. Double down. That was hungrier than the wolf. Hunger. Wolf like hunger. That was the ravenousness, voraciousness of a wolf.
So for Nerdarine and your wonderful a compliment that arrived with you. Normally we're working on our own setting over here, where we are writing an underwater mecha setting. We're in our first novel and you know, doing sensible stuff. We've also decided to rewrite a bad romance book, and that's kind of what you stumbled into, is me rewriting things that we had opinions on. So
Yes.
yeah, welcome to the Black
Yes.
Pants Legion. It's basically this all the way down.
This is what happens when you give us a shit post. This is what happens. It happens at your own peril.
If
We
you're
will take
gonna
it, we will
make
use
a
it.
joke romance book in something like the Battletech setting, you have to push the jokes all the way. You just have to. And yeah, this was a chapter where in the first half I went very tingle. I went very over the top absurdist.
I have but one comment.
What is your comment?
It needs more tentacles. It's,
I don't think I have a pot for add more tentacles. Did I have a pot for add more tentacles?
no, but it's written on the box. On the
Ah,
books
I see.
inside.
I have a book of tips for adding more tentacles. I'll have to reread that one.
Yes, I'm just saying it's in the. I won't call it writer's guide to, oh my god, whatever that is, but add more tentacles, potentially.
We will see. We will see. I do have a section later on where an elemental almost scales Darvendra's apartment building to deliver her a letter. So, you know, we've got some dumb stuff going on in here. But you guys are going to have to wait for there to be more of that, because unfortunately it is 23 minutes past the hour, and at half past the hour we should have BB taking over. I'm just going to go and see if there's been any notes on that. Oh,
notes.
no BB stream today because she's out of town. Would you guys like to carry on for a little bit? Would you like me to read you some more? We do have some spare time today.
First and foremost, how long do we have? So I'll not prompt you.
Technically, we would have until the next segment after BB's, which is a couple of hours. So we could finish this whole chapter if we wanted to and then call it there. And that would be about another 15, 20 minutes, I reckon.
Okay. All I have to say to that is I hope to stick around and hear a little bit about Havna.
You want to talk about Hefner after this?
I mean, that was my hope.
Sure, we can absolutely do that. I'll just need enough time to get a cup of tea.
that
Bully
or
Snake,
kill
I
it.
do not
Whatever.
have a technician named Chuck, but in one of the later chapters, in one of the bits that I decided needed adding in to make this book make sense, there is Technician Hale, and I think you guys are going to really like Technician Hale, because he doesn't physically appear in the book, but at the point where his work becomes relevant to the book, you always know when Technician Hale has had a had hand in things. Maybe his first name is Chuck Hale.
Chuck Hale. Oh dear.
Yes.
In memoriam.
Yes, very much so. Very much so. So what do you think, chat? Would you like me to read the other part of this chapter? Would you like to end here? What would you like to do? It is entirely up to you, folks.
Come on, chat.
This
No,
will be
you
the
won't.
bit where we introduce the plant, I think. Is this the bit where I introduce the plant? I'm fairly certain that this is where Sebastian the ficus turns up. Let's see what
Amen.
chat's saying.
I might have responses if a
More,
ficus
I like
appears.
more. Like, keep going, onward to derp. Will they kiss? Not yet. This is not the chapter where they kiss. We haven't earned the kiss yet. If he's a clanner, he doesn't get a second name. I mean, you know, maybe not. I don't know. Alrighty, we
He-
will finish this chapter then. There's enough yeses and no definitive no's.
He had another name in a bachal for his pants.
Was
He-
Ward similarly awkward when it came to socializing in the OG2? Yes, and also no, and also worse. Ward in the original just kind of stomps through, having emotional swings and making decisions out of nowhere that don't really make sense. I don't know really how to characterize him other than in the original I liked Ward more than I liked the female lead Davendra. Because for all Ward was terribly written and not enjoyable and didn't make sense and had emotional outbursts about things that were way stronger than they needed to be, he at least occasionally told Davendra to just shut the hell up, which she really needed in the OG, because in the OG, Davendra is not like other girls and better than everybody, and she's awful. She is not enjoyable. She's just terrible. So Ward became likeable by sheer dint of on about 3 occasions basically shutting her down. And that's the only real way I can talk about his characterization in the original, and just being over the top about things and stating his emotions out loud from nowhere with nothing around them to back it up. I have tried in this to make him more personable. You've obviously not seen that in the bit that we wrote this time round, because this is where he's doing a very specific thing, and it was more comedic for him to just be playing the straight gruff man to the idiocy of the battle pods. But I have tried to make Ward and Davendra likeable. I've done a lot more work on Davendra than I did on Ward, because she needed a lot more work. But hopefully when you guys get the full version of my rewrite, you will like the book. It's not going to win any awards. It's not supposed to. It's supposed to be silly. It's supposed to be dumb. It's supposed to make you roll your eyes at various points. That's the intention. But I'm hoping you won't come away from it hating the characters. For all one of them is Alaric Ward. I can't fix that. I have to work with Ward. I'm sorry, but I've done the best I can with him.
I really don't mind a gruff military man. I don't understand why the hate. It's okay. There are people like that.
Part of it can come when it's a gruff military man who's written incorrectly, which is the problem in the original. Ward is written as a gruff military man who just flies into fits of rage and doesn't demonstrate his capacity by doing things, but by stating things at times when it doesn't make sense for him to do so. So he's portrayed as a gruff military man who doesn't come across as competent. So he comes across as an idiot and annoying instead.
I do not like that.
Yeah. What
I
I've
may or
tried
may
to
not
do
have
is
grown with a few of these people.
Exactly. So what I've tried to do is have him be gruff and tactical and etc. But, you know, at times where it's okay for him not to be in that mindset, I've tried to give him a little bit of personality. At times when he is in that mindset, to make calls and do things where his body language matches what he's doing and is actually, you know, at least somewhat tactically sound to the best that I have the capacity to be a tactical person. Because unfortunately Ward is going to be restricted by the fact that he can only be as smart as I am. So, you know.
I agree. Again, I may or may not have grown with a fair few of gruff military men.
Mm-hmm.
It is,
It has the same problem as the strong, independent female character who don't need no man, but what you've actually written is just a dude with boobs. You haven't actually given them any characterization. Gruff military man who just states what is correct and is always... No, you have to show. You can't just bolt something on and say somebody is something. You have to show them being that thing, so...
if it's not role-playing unless the role is being played.
Yes. Right, let's finish this chapter, then we'll get out of here so Doctor Who can cover the rest of the space, because I'm not going to have it in me to cover the whole space, especially not if we want to do some stuff off-stream, Lictor. So, we will continue reading. We are now moving to the Davendra part of the chapter. Her house was quiet. Not silent, it was never silent anymore, but quieter than the world she had spent the last week dragging back towards something resembling function. From her window, she could see the highway. Not clearly, not in detail, but she could see the movement. The lights, the flow. A steady, growing rhythm of traffic that hadn't been there a week ago. And she could hear it too, faint through the glass. The low, continuous hum of vehicles moving where recently there had been nothing at all. Darvendra leaned back in her chair and let the sound settle into her bones. Movement. People going somewhere. Work happening. It wasn't fixed, Terra was not yet safe, but it was something. She glanced back down at her noteputer. Approvals continued to scroll in. Regional directors signing off, local coordinators reporting progress. A pushback, yes, but no more than expected. No sudden fractures. No cascading failures. The system, her system, their system, was holding. She switched to the rail yard feed. The camera angle was rough, mounted too high and slightly off-centre, but it showed enough. Flatbeds, containers, and most importantly, agrimex. Rows of them. They were strapped down, secured, moving. Some looked like they had been dragged through hell and then politely asked to keep going. Scorched plating, missing panels, improvised patchwork repairs that made her eye twitch just looking at them. But they were moving. Back to the fields. Back to work, not war. Back to purpose. People moved around them, loading, unloading, directing. And then she saw something she hadn't expected so soon. Smiles. Not many and not broad, but unmistakably there. A man waved someone forward. Someone else laughed at something off camera. A loader operator gave a thumbs up that was returned a second later. Darvendra exhaled slowly. Good, she murmured. She set the stylus down. And then, uninvited, unwanted, her mind drifted. We will be more careful. Her fingers rose to her lips before she could stop them. She froze, then scowled. No, absolutely not. No part of her, no part was going to entertain that line of thought. Alaric Ward was the conqueror of her planet. He was responsible for setting half of it on fire. He was possessed of an arrogance that presumed he was destined to save Terra, whether it wanted to be or not. He was a man who described lives lost as resource deficit. He was also... She stopped that thought immediately. No, she said again, louder this time. Sebastian did not respond. Darvendra turned to glare at him anyway. The ficus plant sat in the corner, leaves catching the late afternoon light with an air of quiet, leafy judgment. Don't, she told him. Sebastian continued to be a plant. This is your fault, she added. He did not contest this. Darvendra pushed back from her desk and stood. She needed a drink, a refined one, not a thoughtful one, something strong, something that did not require reflection or nuance or diplomacy, and came in a big bottle. She found something that met those criteria with admirable efficiency, poured a generous amount, and took it with her into the adjoining room. The table there was already set. On it sat a world in miniature. Rail lines, half finished, curved through a scaled landscape of terrain foam and painted plaster. Tiny cargo depots stood beside them, one still missing a roof. Roads had been laid in precise, measured strokes, complete with faded lane markings and microscopic signage. On a shelf nearby, other projects sat completed. Ranks of high fantasy soldiers, painted in intricate detail, stood frozen mid-charge. Armoured figures, cloaked archers, something that might have been a wizard and might have been a mistake. And in the centre of the table, her current work. Battle mechs, tiny, perfectly proportioned, arranged in a scene that was only partially complete and already deeply opinionated. Darvendra set her drink down and sat. For a moment she just looked at it. Then she picked up a brush. The world narrowed. Not to war and politics, not to boardrooms and defined abs tyrants. To control, to detail, to a scale where things went where she put them and stayed there. Right, she muttered. She reached for a small figure, a savage wolf still mostly unpainted, and held it up to the light. Her eyes narrowed. You, she informed it, are insufferable. The miniature did not argue. She dipped the brush, steady even with the drink in her system, and began applying careful, deliberate strokes. Nearby, a smaller mech, painted in clean whites and reds, marked with the medical insignia and a tiny CNC logo. It stood over a fallen chassis, one tiny sculpted limb raised as if mid-gesture. She paused, considered, then adjusted the angle slightly. Better, she decided. On the side of the table, a book lay open. Cultures of the Clans. Several passages had been underlined. A few had been annotated with sharp, unimpressed notes in the margins. Some had been blotted out with marker and coffee stains and general disdain. Davendra took another drink. Then she leaned in, very carefully, very precisely. She painted tiny letters onto the side of the Savage Wolf. HB2C. A mech, she had learned, that was good for blowing up, with aging clan pilots inside. Something about honour. She sat back, squinting at her work. Perfect. Another drink. She pointed the brush at the miniature. Sooner see you blow up before I kiss you, arsehole. Sebastian had no comment on this. Devendra nodded once, satisfied. Then she blinked, and she lowered the brush. Oh no. She looked at the table, at the tiny diorama, at the tiny war she was staging with medical personnel and agricultural implements, at the book, at the drink, at the plant. No, she said, softer now. This had gone too far. She set the brush down with exaggerated care, as if it might somehow undo the last 5 minutes. It did not. Davendra stood, slightly less steadily than intended. This, she informed Sebastian, is not a problem. Sebastian remained neutral on the matter. She nodded. Not a problem, she repeated, slurred. She turned, walked towards the bedroom, and paused in the doorway. And then, with the weary resolve of someone who had decided on a course of action and would probably regret it later, I am not thinking about his command couch. A beat. At all! She went to bed. And that is the end of the chapter. Are you okay, Lictor?
The picture of calm. I can withstand 1,000 more and not. Oh, I'm fine. Of course I'm fine. Why would I be fine? Do I sound like I'm not fine? The Sarkhan would never understand how fine I am. There is absolutely nothing wrong.
Sebastian is clearly the star of the show. I mean, yes. I mean, if it helps, I did originally have Sebastian as a Monstera, Lictor. You could just imagine it's a Monstera.
I am imagining it as a monster. Again, I am not screaming my lungs out. You can hear me not screaming my lungs out. This is definitely everything. This is an everything is all right moment. You can hear it in my voice.
Hello, Diggs. Thank you for wandering into the nonsense. I promise I am getting out in a minute. Bibi said she wasn't here this week.
Yes.
But we had some absolute nonsense to read.
Yes, we had absolute nonsense. And a ficus.
Yes, there was a ficus.
Out of all rooted existences that could possibly have conjoined into the stream, it's a ficus.
Next chapter, we get to go to the rail yard for an administrative embarrassment, and the shadow of Technician Hale will descend across the rest of this book.
Good. Everything will be fine. I promise. I took a moment, I looked at the book, I checked the future. The tapestry is complete. It's all going to be fine.
If there's anybody here who doesn't know why the ficus, you need to listen to the Tales of Deltard Green and Groves, who explained management in the manner of the ficus. And it was a very good moment, very funny. If you have not seen Deltard Green, you need to go and listen to that. It's very, very good. Yes. Alrighty. I think we're going to wrap up my nonsense here. There's 50 of you here. I presume many of you are just like, where's BB? Why am I putting up with this nonsense? But thank you for being here. I appreciate your time. It's also Magistratum Mundanus. Yes, the ficus is just a thing. It's also, if you are following along with the Traveller podcast, now releasing on YouTube, I was very kindly asked to do the thumbnails for those. And in one of the thumbnails, there is a ficus. So, you know, keep your eye out for that as that series continues going. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go and drag Lictor off to a completely different setting and abuse him with that for a little while. I will be here on Sunday for WBPLW and again next week for more writing nonsense. I think Doctor Who is going to take over as soon as I get out of here. So have a wonderful afternoon, chat.
Have a wonderful time, and please grow more monsters, less ficuses.
Less
Thank you.
ficus, more monstera. Got it.
Yes, this has been a PSA from Lictor. Somewhere.
Alrighty. With that, ladies and gentlemen, we are